Good morning. This is Dr. Mary Harb Sheets, and I am the chairperson of the Board of Psychology Licensure Committee, and I will call the meeting to order. It is 10 a.m. on February 2nd. Ms. Proto, could you please call the roll?
Good morning. Harb Sheets.
Here.
Here. Tate.
Here.
I think we're having some sound issues. I can see Dr. Tate nodding also. Ms. Proto.
Okay, I did get everybody. So we have Harb Sheets, Nystrom, and Tate. Thank you. Roll is complete.
Thank you. Good, thank you. Okay, I am happy to welcome all who are here to today's Licensure Committee meeting. And before we move to public comment, I need to ask if there are any members of the public at any of our locations, our physical locations.
None in the El Dorado room.
None with me in Redding, California.
And none with me in San Diego, California. Are there any other locations that we need to check in with?
This is the moderator, and at this point, everyone else is on WebEx.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, before we move to public comment for items not on the agenda, I would like to share with you a few logistical items. Please turn your cell phones and any other devices to silent, and also please mute your telephone unless you're speaking. If you are attending today's meeting and would like continuing professional development credit, Ms. McCochran will let us know now how you will receive credit. Ms. McCochran?
Hi, good morning. So attending today's Licensure Committee meeting provides you with CPD credit under category number 1, attendance at a California Board of Psychology meeting. For your CPD records, please notate today's date as February 2nd, 2024, and note that we are here for the Licensure Committee meeting. At the end of the meeting, I will announce how many hours you can be credited. If you called into the meeting, please email bopce@dca.ca.gov. Again, it's bopce@dca.ca.gov with your license number and the phone number used to call in. And if you signed in using the computer or mobile device, your attendance is automatically documented and no further information is necessary. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, as indicated, we have allotted time for public comment for items not on the agenda at the beginning of our meeting. And additionally, we welcome public comments on any items on the agenda, and it is the committee's intent to ask for public comments prior to taking action on any agenda item. We believe public comments are instrumental to our meetings and add to the vibrant discussions on matters before our committee. In making a public comment, please do not identify any licensee or registrant of the board by name in order to avoid prejudicing future action that may be required of board members in our capacity as a deliberative body in enforcement proceedings. Please be respectful of our time constraints and the need to conduct and complete the committee's business. If there are several members of the public seeking to comment on an item not on the agenda or on a particular agenda item, I will set a time limit on each speaker to ensure the maximum participation by all in the context of a busy agenda. So I would like to open it up now for public comment for any items not on the agenda. Madam Moderator, can you please open the public comment section?
Certainly. This is the moderator. We've enabled the WebEx Q&A option as well as the hand raise option to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment on an item that is not on the agenda, you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, typically at the bottom row of your WebEx screen. On a mobile device, you'll find that behind the 3-dot other options. And the other option, other idea is to look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into that text box, and click send. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. And again, we will be going in order of who requested to comment first. And Chair Harbsheets, did you want to start with a 2-minute time limit or unlimited?
At this point, let's start with unlimited, but if we run into any kinds of issues, we will go with the 2-minute, and I will let you know.
Thank you. So our first request for comment comes from James Passino. I will send you a request to unmute your microphone. And James, you should have gotten a pop-up that says unmute me. There you go, you're unmuted.
This
Yes.
meeting. However, I inadvertently pressed the wrong button, so I apologize for taking your time.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you. And our next request for comment comes from Cindy Mannion. Cindy, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And Cindy, did you see the pop-up of unmute me? There you go, you're unmuted. And now I see you're muted again. Do keep in mind that the question mark icon would allow you to type in your comment if you can't get your microphone to work. And I'm going to offer a similar comment to Thomas W. Thomas Wells, we do not see that you have an audio option, so I can't send you an unmute request, but you are welcome to click on the question mark icon and type the word comment or type your entire comment into that text box and click send to host. And our next request for comment is from Alexia Estrada. Alexia, I'm sending you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted.
Comment is that as a student, I'm a registered psychological associate, and the website is hard to navigate and the information is unclear compared to the information that the MFTs get, because I'm also a LMFT, and their stuff is very clear and concise. So I'm curious as to why the BOP is very confusing. Even some of the graphics are not clear to some questions.
Thank you for that. I haven't looked at it myself recently, but I think that's a really important information for us to look at. And I appreciate you sharing that with us, and we will take that into consideration and take a look at that.
Thank you. Our next request for comment is from Crystal Bowen. Crystal, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted.
Okay, good morning. I have a question regarding the administrative citations that are issued. So there are administrative actions that are still listed. If you do I'm a licensed psychologist, so when you do a license lookup, my information comes up and then my license number. However, I was issued a citation when I was still a student, And so,
Sorry, can I please stop you? Because we want to be sure that no names are given during this public comment, but we would definitely like to hear and have, maybe that would be the enforcement division or enforcement section, who could help you with that.
okay.
Is that
I
okay?
really just wanted to, it's just a question of how long do those citations last on public record?
Okay, I am not sure of that. Ms. Sorick, can you answer that?
Yes, all citations are posted on the website and available to members of the public for a total of 5 years. After that time, citations should be removed. If it has been past 5 years since your citation, I would recommend emailing BOP, B as in boy, O, P as in Paul, enforcement at DCA, like Department of Consumer Affairs, .ca like California, .gov like government.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay.
And our next request for comment is, Cindy has managed to type the comment in. Good morning, looking forward to the meeting and info on APA versus non-APA schools. It would be interesting at some point to hear the stats on the same issue regarding disciplinary actions. We've also had a request through our Q&A to repeat the email used to register for credit, and if you could spell that slowly, that would be appreciated.
Okay. So we will, let me ask Ms. McCochran if you could send that email or spell that email out for us again.
Yes, so it's BOP as in Board of Psychology, so BOPCE at DCA.ca.gov.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
And yes, we have more comments, sorry.
That's okay.
Let's see, Lanique, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted.
Oh, okay. Good morning. Hopefully you can hear me. Thank you so much for taking my question. I just wanted to know what was the motivation for changing the continuing education credits and how they are documented.
Okay. The motivation, this process started, I think, back in 2015, and I'm going to ask Ms. Sorick, who was involved from the beginning, to share a little bit about that, and then she will also refer you to a copy of our continuing education program that we did recently, which will give you some of that other detailed information. So if Ms. Sorick, could you just briefly let Lanique know, give her an insight into some of the history and the motivation for making that change from CE to CPD?
Sure. This proposal of changing from a continuing education model to a continuing professional development model started, I believe, even further back. It was, I believe, in 2011 that the board started discussing looking at a national model that was presented at the time by the Association of State and Provincial Psychology Boards. And what was presented at that time was a broader range of continuing education opportunities to expand the competency of psychologists and opportunities for licensees to interact and to grow and be supported in their practice. And it was over an evolution of several years that it went from 27 hours or 36 hours of traditional continuing education to a 27 hours of traditional continuing education, and then a mix of 9 hours of continuing professional development hours requirement. And those hours can be divided up in several different ways. We have a phenomenal CPD webinar presentation that goes into the history of the issue and all the nuances and intricacies of the requirements. And I will hand it off to Ms. McCochran to add additional information and resource pages on our website.
Yes, so if you just go to the Board of Psychology's website, which is psychology.ca.gov, right on the home page is the regulation advisory, which provides a detailed history of what Ms. Sorick just stated. And we also have the CPD reporting form and recordings of the webinars posted from last year, and then the one that we recently did on January 22nd, that will be posted within the coming weeks. And then again, if you have any questions regarding any of the activities, just email, it's on the screen, bopce@dca.ca.gov.
Thank you, Ms. McCochran. Okay, go on to our next commenter.
Exactly. So we have Maurizio Asandri, and I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And Maurizio, did you see a pop-up come up on your screen? And for anyone who has having problems with the hand raise or any audio issues, you can click on the question mark icon and then type your question into the chat, into the text box there, and click send. We do have a question in the Q&A. It is, I guess, an issue. What is the justification of the increase in renewal fee? I renewed in 2022 and it has now almost doubled in price. That comment was from someone logged into WebEx as Michelle Weber.
Okay.
Let's see. There is some confusion about the continuing education credit, and that the email was only needed if a person called in by phone, that if they join from a computer, they don't need to put their full name and their full license number. If someone could clarify those instructions.
Are these two separate ones?
There are 3 separate ones. Yes, one
Okay.
person says name, but I did not put my license number. Should I sign out and sign in again? And
Okay.
one person wanted to clarify if this was only if they're a phone call-in user.
Okay, so let's just take them individually. So I'll ask Ms. McCochran again to comment on what do they need to do to ensure they get continuing education credit if they are joining the meeting from different devices.
Yeah, so if you logged in using your computer, then you could just put in your full name. If you didn't put in your license number, that's fine. I could find you through your name. But if you called in, please email your name and your license number and the phone number you used to bopce@dca.ca.gov.
Thank you. Okay, and Madam Moderator, there was another question that was not about CPD. It was on the fees, on the justification for raising fees. And
Right.
again, I'm going to ask Ms. Sorick if she could share the discussion that was had that led to the raising of fees in a short discussion, because I'm trying to be sensitive to time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Harpsheets. This discussion about increasing licensure fees, both from the applicant and from the licensees, has been discussed over the past several years. The board had not raised its fees via legislation in statute for 30 years. We were running at a structural imbalance, which means we were taking in less than we were spending, and that caught up to the board, which necessitated a fee increase to write our budget. That is the justification, in short, for the license increase. As I said, it had not been raised in law in 30 years via legislation. So as everyone knows, things have been costing more money over the last 30 years. Things such as investigator fees, staff salaries, the Office of the Attorney General's office, and any other vendor services that the board uses to function and operate. That's just a very brief. I will hand it off to Mr. Burke to expand a little bit on this item and provide any additional information that may be useful to justification. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I say one other thing that I think sometimes people are not aware, and I know I, as a licensee, was also not aware prior to being a board member, that the fees that are charged are not profit-making fees, that the board does provide, we are self-supporting, and our fees are set based on what it actually costs the board to provide the services. So, Mr. Burke?
Well, thank you. This is John Burke, the Assistant Executive Officer. You've both done a great job of explaining the justification as to why we increased the fees now. We were running at a structural imbalance. The board did a comprehensive analysis of how much it costs to do each individual action within the board on both the enforcement and the licensing side. And to simply put, the licensing fees hadn't been raised in so long. We were not bringing in enough money to fund our existing operations to the point that we were going insolvent and would have got insolvent next fiscal year had something not happened. We realized it was a seemingly drastic increase, but all that was absolutely necessary in order for us to continue to exist. We are a 100% specially funded agency, which means we are only funded by the licensing fees, and that's the nature of it. It's not something the board took at all lightly, and we will continue on our efforts to educate and explain the analysis and justification as to why this happened when it happened.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. I hope that's helpful to the person who has made the comment. Okay, do we have more public comment?
Yes, we do. I wanted to loop back to Maurizio Asandri and try one more time to send your unmute request.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, you're unmuted.
Oh, actually, you already answered my questions was about the CE credit, and if I am on the computer, that would be automatically recorded. That's correct, right?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And then let's see, next is Jesse Jacob. Jesse, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for taking my question. I'll make it brief. I would just like to ask if it would be possible in the future on the Breeze license lookup for psychologists and other professionals' home addresses to be shielded from the public. I'm aware we can have a PO box, but I think it would be reasonable to not have the personal address of all people on that website shown to all people in the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone, Mr. Burke or Ms. Sork, that would like to comment on that or have something to add? Or shall we just take that information in and speak about it later?
Dr. Harpsheets, this is Stephanie.
Yes.
Can I provide some information about that comment?
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Jacob, thank you for your comment. So regarding the DCA license search website, it's only showing any address public as recorded as the address of record for a license record. So if you have a PO box, you should update that in your profile through Brief to make that as the AOR address. And then you would need to put your other street address as the confidential address in your profile. And that should be only showing the PO box on the DCA license search when you're looking your license information up on the public website. And of course, if you have any questions about that, you could email us at BOP, like Board of Psychology, and then licensing at dca.ca.gov, and then we will provide you further guidance if you're having trouble with that. Thank you, Dr. Harpsheets.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Chung. Thank you. Okay, I see there's a question in the Q&A box.
Correct. We have 2 questions left.
Oh, okay, I will let you read them.
Thank you. Dr. Glinda Robertson asks, what was the reasoning behind not allowing the degree of Doctor of Psychology in Educational Psychology to test for EPPP? I was informed to go back to school to seek further degrees as another doctoral degree. Will the older degrees be grandfathered in? And I understand it's up to you if you choose to answer these verbally or not.
Right. Well, I can respond to that from this perspective. We follow the actual regulations in the Business and Professions Code, and we look at the degree that has been presented to us as justification for licensure, which then, of course, is allowing them to take the EPPP. And if the degree does not fit within the regulation is when we provide feedback about how it may not fit. If you have specific questions, I would suggest that you email Ms. Chung in our licensing section, and she might be able to provide more specific information. Ms. Chung, could you let this person know how to reach you?
Yes, she could. They could send an email to boblicensing@dca.ca.gov.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next question.
The next question was, I am confused about the law, ethnic, which I assume might be a typo for ethic, and cultural diversity, social justice requirement. Does it need to be from all CPD categories?
Oh, okay. I'll let Ms. McCochran respond to that.
So for the 2 requirements, the laws and ethics and the cultural diversity and or social justice, you can use any CPD category or activity to fulfill those 4 hours. And then if you have any further questions about it, please email me at bopce@dca.ca.gov. Thank you.
And I would add, since I've done that, if you use the board's form that you'll find on the board website, you will see next to the different categories, to each of the categories, a box in the far right corner that refers to those cultural diversity and social justice requirements and the ethics requirement. And you would just, if you did it, for example, under self-directed learning, you would check the box there under the self-directed learning section. If you did it under one of your sponsored continuing educations, you would check the box in that item. And I think when you look at that form, you'll see what I mean. Okay, what is our next question?
Our next question comment is again from Lanique. Follow-up question to renewal fees. Since the America public have also been burdened with financial hardship due to the global pandemic, are there any financial support options for renewal fees?
I am not aware of any. I will let Ms. Chung answer that. Oh, no, you don't do, it's not renewal. I would have to ask Ms. Sorick, please.
There are other options other than renewing active. An individual can renew as inactive, which is a lesser fee if that is an option. However, the person would not be able to practice with an inactive renewal. Another option is retired status. Again, that is a non-practicing status. So those are the only two other options for renewal fees.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any more questions?
Yes, of course, yes. So we do have actually a raised hand from Judith Greco-Gregory. And Judith, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted.
Signing into the meeting. I know you sign in with your email and your license number and all that. What if you change your email? Will you that will still be recognized as you sign in of just your name and your license?
Yes, it will.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, and back to our written questions. Let's see. Tricia Wallace has asked, could you provide statistics on when licensees get in trouble and are ordered to pay the fines, the percentage of if those fees are paid, or do the licensees go to collections?
Okay, I will ask Ms. Sorick to respond to that, please.
I'm actually going to defer to Ms. Monterrubio on this. I can say generally that we have levied fines and have asked for remuneration from licensees who have received discipline from the board, which both instances have not been paid back to the board, and there are options for us to work with Franchise Tax Board to get some of that money back, but I will refer to Ms. Monterrubio on any additional information she may have on this.
Oh, thanks. I wasn't aware she was on the call. Thank you.
Hi, this is Mrs. Montrubio. I don't have data as to how many unpaid citations there are. I would say, though, it's a small majority. The board does offer payment plans if an individual is struggling financially. If an individual were not to pay the citation and fine that is ordered, as Ms. Sorick stated, we do work with the Franchise Tax Board to recover that money at a later date.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions, Ms.?
Yes, our next comment from James Henry Willis. Could the comprehensive analysis of the board's costs be made available? I think that might help explain the justifications for raising fees.
I think that information was presented at a board meeting in some public information. Do you, Mr. Burke, are you aware of that?
Yes, it's John Burke, Assistant Executive Officer. We shared at the board meeting a fee analysis document, which it didn't go down into the. We did it internally. We looked at each individual process. So how much time does a licensing analyst spend with doing this process? Okay, how many do they do, and calculating the dollar amounts from that. And it was presented in the fee analysis to the board. We didn't, so we did show our working, and there's background documents, spreadsheets, and so on, which I'm not sure if they were shared publicly, because obviously for the board to, it was taken that there was no need to see the complete breakdown, although that was shared with DCA and the Department of Finance and so on. So we do have it, and like I said, we can do more to educate and explain. We did have to show our working, and perhaps we can in future do a presentation sort of showing it again to fully explain what the board's costs were, for sure.
I think that would be good information. I'm not sure in what format, whether it would be in one of the quarterly journals, but it's definitely a good point because I know it is a concern expressed by psychologists and psychological associates. Thank you. Okay. Other questions?
Yes. The next question is from Judy Sue. Not a specific question, but voicing the same concern. I also had the same concern about making the home address shielded from the public. I am having a difficult time removing all my personal information from the public Google search, including my phone number. The address on my licensure has been shared with the NPI website, and now I am having to contact NPI to try to remove my information.
Okay.
That was a comment.
Okay. Okay.
Next is from Yelena Blank. Does the board envision a possibility for California ever joining PsyPact? It would be a boon for client access in our current world of telehealth.
Okay. I think Ms. Sork might be able to speak to the conversations that the board has had and the many conversations, the many discussions, the research that the board has done. And if you could share that where we're at this point in time, that would be helpful.
Sure, and I'm going to ask Mr. Burke to tag team on this one with me as well. Just a brief overview. The board has formally on both board meetings, but on both board meetings and an ad hoc PsyPact committee meeting, have looked at the current requirements to join PsyPact with the Association of State and Provincial Psychology Boards. And through both discussions, there was an analysis completed by the staff. With new information, we reformulated that analysis, presented the information to the board, and the board decided that it was not in the best interest of the board to join PsyPact and seek legislative change to do so. There were several different factors that went into that, and we will be actually putting together a article in our next journal, which will get into some of the background of those discussions and why the board was not interested in joining. Mr. Burke, did you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, hello, this is John Burke, Assistant Executive Officer. The board has no current plans to join PsyPact. The board voted in August of 2021, and you can go back and look at the video and the minutes. It was determined not to join PsyPact at this time. As Executive Officer said, there were specific reasons for doing that, which I don't know how much, in the interest of time, specifically the board's primary concern is to do with the exclusion of a portion of licensees due to an APA accreditation requirement for joining PsyPact. And that's something that's the primary reason, although there were other reasons. Since the board reviewed it in August, there have been some changes actually to the model legislation. And this morning, in fact, a bill was introduced in the California legislature, which would have us join PsyPact. It's I forget the bill number. It's Assemblymember Bonta. So this is a subject which the board will be reviewing again a lot this year. And the board will review the matter again. The language has changed, and will vote to take a position. So that's where we were at. So this is a pretty fast developing area of policy, actually.
Thank you, Mr. Burke, for that very up-to-date information. Okay, next question.
Thank you. Yes. Next question is sort of logistical. Brian Rich would like to know the time schedule for this meeting that was sent to me via email was 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. or completion of business. I discovered this morning the schedule listed on the meeting list on the BOP website is 9:30 to 5 p.m., which is correct.
I think what happens is the meeting is scheduled to start at 10 a.m., but people can start signing on at 9:30 so that when we start at 10 a.m., everybody has had a chance to get on and doesn't just scramble at 10 o'clock. And the close of business, we have the open session of the meeting, which is what we're doing now and what is on the agenda. And then that is the time that licensees can get credit for attending the meeting. After the open session items are complete, and that may be, I think last time in July it was an hour and 40 minutes, although today we have a lot more public comment questions. But then we go into closed session. And at that point, the no licensees, it's closed just to the committee members. And so when you see 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock or completion of business, that's because we don't know how long the closed session will take and when it will start. So hopefully that clarifies it. But think about the 9:30 as you can start signing on at that point in time.
Let's see, we have a new raised hand from Linda Lee Ringer. Linda, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And you're unmuted.
You hear me?
Yes, very quietly, if you could speak a little louder.
Sure. I had a question about in the category 1, continuing education learning, it says peer consultation. And I couldn't find a definition of exactly what that is. And my question is, I worked at a facility and we had treatment team meetings every week, you know, where it could be considered peer consultation. And I don't know if those meetings count towards this or not.
Ms. McCochran, can you respond to this?
Yeah, for the specific questions that you have, I think it would be best if you email me directly so we can discuss that. Again, if you could just email bopce@dca.ca.gov with your question. That way we can discuss that and I can get all the details and give you that information.
Okay, sure. Can I just repeat that? Was that the same that you gave before, bopce@dca.ca.gov?
Yes, that's correct.
And who do I address it to?
To me, my name is Liesel, spelled Lievel.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Next question.
Thank you. Our next raised hand is from Monica Grace. Monica, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted.
I was a few minutes late, and I can attend for 3 hours because I have sessions later on. My question is, will I get credit even if I do not attend the entire meeting? And how, if the answer is yes, where should my credit belong to? What category?
Ms. McCochran?
Yeah, so you will get credit for the amount of time that you attended the meeting. And then the credit falls under CPD learning category number 1 under attendance at a California Board of Psychology meeting. And then
Okay,
again, if you have any more questions regarding that of how to document or any questions regarding specific activities, just email me at the BOPCE email.
there is, I believe there is a form that we have to complete with all our CEUs, correct? On site.
There
On,
is on the website. You will find that
yes.
form. But I
Okay.
think that is not a required form, but it will help you keep track. And if you are selected for an audit, you could send that form in. And I found it very helpful and to use and relatively easy to use when I did this last year.
Thank you. And historically, I have also submitted all the certificates for all the courses I have attended. And so, and I will continue to do that.
Sure, sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And okay, so the amount of hours that I will attend today, I can declare them in the form, correct?
Yes,
All
yes.
right. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Next question.
Yes, next from Andrea Davis. For CPD for supervisors, where do we track and document our required 6 hours of supervision training?
Okay, Ms. McCochran?
So if the training was done through a course that was approved by a board recognized entity such as APA, CPA, or one of the other medical associations, then you could record it under CPD learning category number 3, sponsored continuing education. And again, the form that Dr. Harb-Sheets is referring to, the CPD reporting form, is a very good resource to help you keep track of your CPD activities.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question.
Next, are there any plans for the BOP to assume responsibilities for the research psychoanalyst license from the medical board?
The answer to that is yes, and I will ask Ms. Chung to let you know what our time frame is in implementing that.
Thank you, Dr. Harb-Sheets. The bill passed, and then we have an anticipated operation day, effective day on 1/1/2025.
Thank you.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Next question.
Let's see, we have a raised hand from Robert Cipriano. Robert, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And Robert, did you get your pop-up on your, it might be behind the 3 other options. You're unmuted.
Thank you. I have a question. If I'm an ABAP reviewer of particular candidates, what CPD category would that fall in?
Hi, this is Lizelle. I would just say for you to email me that information and so we could discuss that further. Just email bopce@dca.ca.gov.
Okay. Do you need more information on that?
Yeah, there's just some CPD, like I think it would be best just for the sake of time and for the licensing committee to just email me.
Okay.
And in the email, maybe you could provide what that entails. If you are being a reviewer, what exactly are you doing? That would be helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And our next written comment was from James Henry Willis. I would like to second Dr. Mannion's request about schools and discipline actions. Is it possible to see the questions asked? For example, information on post-education seminars and special training programs captured in the collection of information.
I'm not sure I understand the question. The questions asked. I think someone was asking earlier about APA accredited versus non-accredited schools and disciplinary actions. And I know we don't have that information. But so I don't know if if Dr. Willis could let us know a little bit more about a little bit more detail about in his question, that would be helpful.
Thank you. Next was from Amber Lee Walzer. I attended 2 of the 3 hours of the last board meeting on January 22nd. Today, the meeting may go many more hours than I can actually attend due to my job hours. I assume we get partial credit for attending some, but not all of these meetings for CPD, so long as we document this. Thank you.
Yes, and we just heard from Ms. McCochran that that's correct.
Perfect. Thank you. The next question is from Gary Buck. You mentioned meeting law and ethics and cultural diversity requirements with CPD hours. Can they also be with CE hours?
If I understand that person is asking, can we use sponsored CE programs, for example, that are APA sponsored, CPA sponsored, or one of the medical boards to meet that requirement? And the answer is yes.
Great, thank you. And Judith Greco-Gregory just mentioned, I find the continuing professional development reporting form very helpful. James Henry Willis is asking, can the board's web training on CPD be made available for offline viewing? And can that be applicable to credit? My apologies if this has already been done and I just did not find it.
Yeah, Ms. McCochran, I know you've been asked that question. Can you let us know again how that is available and if credit is available?
Yeah, so the webinar we completed or did last year in 2023 is up on the website. It's under the CPD page. And then the webinar we just completed on January 22nd, that will be up on the website as well within the next couple weeks. And if you viewing the recording will provide you with CPD credit under self-directed learning. So if you watched this, for example, this last webinar was 3 hours. If you watch the recording for the 3 hours, you would get 3 hours under self-directed learning.
Thank you. Okay.
Our next comment from Andrea Davis, I would suggest that the tracking form include a category for supervisors to be sure that this is not a separate and forgotten requirement buried in many regulations.
Okay, thank you for that comment.
All right. Next comment, from Keisha White, if a psychologist has taken the 15-hour supervision course to supervise LMFTs, LCSWs, does that include meeting the requirement for the 6-hour supervision training for psychologists as well?
Ms. McCochran, are you prepared to answer that, or would that be maybe Ms. Sorick or Mr. Burke?
So they're asking if a 15-hour supervision course to supervise LMFTs, can that meet the 6-hour supervision training? They're not specifically asking if it's CPD, or if they can get CPD credit for it.
Right, it's not CPD. In order to be a supervisor of, say, psychological associates, supervisors have to take a 6-hour supervision course annually. And that might be something Mr. Payne might be able to address, because that's a totally different regulation than CPD.
What was the exact regulation? I probably would need to look that up.
Yeah, you might need to look that up. Well, and so that you don't do it during the meeting, the regulation is in order to be a supervisor of psychologists in training, there is a requirement that people who are supervisors take a 6-hour course each year. And you might want to look that up, and maybe this person could, who could we suggest that they contact for that information?
Ms. Chen, could you answer this
Oh,
question?
okay, great.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They actually could contact us at Bob Licensing, and then we can look at it, what it is about, just for the sake of time, and then we will get back to you.
Yeah,
And then in your email to us, please just mention that you attended the meeting today and ask about this question on the supervision coursework requirement. So then it can flag it for us that we have this discussion today.
I think, yeah, the question here is, since that the course for LMFTs and LCSWs might be very different than supervision of people in training to be psychologists. And so it might not meet the guidelines that are expected in the regulation for psychologists. So it would be a sort of a content question here. Okay, let's go on to the next one.
Right, we have a raised hand from Linda Lee Ringer. And Linda, I'm going to send you the request to unmute. You're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. How many minimum hours are required for categories 1 and 2? I notice it says the maximum, but what's the minimum?
There aren't really any minimums that that you need to meet. You might not even use one of those categories.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so no minimums.
Yeah,
Just
you don't have to meet, you don't have to use every single category.
no, I understand that, but because I know it could be either 1 or 2 or something like that, but I just didn't understand how many. It's not very clear what is required from each category.
You know, if you would like to discuss it in more detail, please feel free to email Liselle at the BOPCE. Yeah, she will be happy to help you.
Thank you so much.
Sure, sure. Oh, I want to clarify. I see that there was a question that popped up when I was saying every year. It is every 2 years for supervisors.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see, and I'm going to be typing a couple of links that I will fill in on this slide. But as I'm doing that, the next question, again, or comment from James Henry Willis regarding APA schools and non-APA schools and exam performance. I suspect that post-education training plays a significant role in exam outcomes. Is this captured in the current collection of data?
It isn't captured in the current collection, and I think you'll really be interested in the report that we have during the rest of our open part of the meeting. We have an agenda item where we do have exam performance comparing APA and non-APA schools, but we don't have information on post-education training.
Thank you. And the next question, all right, from Andrea Davis. Oh, yes, this was the 1 year or 2 year.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, and that does look, oh, let's see, nope. From Farnaz Karomi, are approved entities for CPD number 3 limited to the ones listed on the website?
Liselle, would you like to answer?
Sorry, yes. Yes, so the ones that are listed on the website are the only approved entities at this time. If you have questions, whether the course you took is approved, I would say contact the CE provider and ask them if the specific course is approved by one of those entities.
Okay, thanks. Okay, the next one.
Next question is from Donald Tweedy. It concerns me that so many questions regarding CPD require emailing. That suggests that the criterion for the categories are poorly defined.
Okay, I'll comment on that. I think that the definitions of the categories are defined in the regulation and are also described in some detail on the self-reporting sheet and online and in the FAQs. But I think because it's new, it just can be confusing and overwhelming, and that's excuse me, why we're trying to be very available by email to help people sort that out, because it's a lot of information to take in and some big changes for us. Okay, next one.
Thank you. Next one from Elisa Dennis. Will teachers who are certified to teach mindfulness and who teach mindfulness courses and retreats be able to count these experiences towards CPDs, especially given how much research-based evidence there is about the psychological benefits of mindfulness?
I think that this is one of those questions that if they are teaching, if they're talking about teaching a course or taking a course to get their certifications, it depends on how that course is structured and the content of that course, whether it might fit into, say, self-directed learning. If it's but the bottom line is it focused specifically on psychology related concepts? And that would be one where you would probably want to contact Ms. McCochran and go over the specific details of what's in that course. Okay, we have more.
One moment. Forgive me, I'm typing. Okay, so I've added some information to the slide that's on the website that's being shown that has some resources available on the board website. Unfortunately, due to the nature of WebEx, these are not hot links, but these are pointers to the different information.
Great, thank you for doing that. And maybe if you're on a device where you can take a picture of it and then type it in yourself, that would probably work. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that folks could access our newsletter. And the first link is to the newsletter page that has all the board's newsletters. And the second link is for how to subscribe for future newsletters and notifications. And this ensures that you'll get the information that we've been talking about, for example, today.
Oh, thank you so much, Ms. Sorick. Okay.
And I do not see any further questions or comments. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Thank you, Ms. Moderator.
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that. Okay, we will now move on to the next part of our open session meeting. We've just finished our public comment, and we'll go to the first item on the agenda. Well, it's actually number 4, which is the review and possible approval of the licensure committee meeting minutes from our July 21st, 2023 meeting.
So move.
That was Dr.
And I'll
Tate
second.
and Ms. Nystrom second. And Ms. Proto, could you call the roll?
Barb Sheep?
Aye.
Oh,
You need
actually,
comment.
Dr. Tate did direct that we do need to take public comment on it before we vote.
Oh, of course. Thank you, Dr. Tate. Okay, can we open the box for public comment on the licensure committee meeting minutes from July 21st, 2023?
Exactly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature as well as the hand raise feature. If anyone would like to make a comment on the meeting minutes from July, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. You may look for the question mark icon and click that. Type the word comment into the text box and click send. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand. Are there any comments on the motion or the minutes? And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please do.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Proto.
Thank you. Harb Sheep?
Aye.
Nystrom? Aye. Tate?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will move to item number 5 on the agenda, which are the staff reports, and begin with the licensing report from Ms. Zhang.
Thank you, Dr. Harpsheet. Good morning, attendees and committee members. For the licensing report, I would like to start off with the BREEZE update, which include the launch of the Registered Psychological Testing Technician application on BREEZE on January 4th, 2024. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Psychological Testing Technician, also known as PTT, is a new category of registration under the Board of Psychology jurisdiction as of January 1, 2024. So going back to BREEZE update, along with the PTT registration application, we also have the PTT add or change supervisor form, change of address form, and the renewal form available on BREEZE now. And then I would also like to note that this licensing report, it does not include data on the new PTT category because the PTT was recently effective, like I mentioned, the beginning of this year. So there was not much data on the PTT to report, considering that this licensing report was created on during mid-January. However, we do plan to include the PTT data in subsequent meetings. So moving along to attachment A, it provides the licensing population report and each license status and comparison to the data with the report made at the November 2023 board meeting. We have 100 more licensed psychologists who are in current status and 75 less who are in the inactive status. For registered psychological associates, we have about the same number with only 2 more current psychological associates on this report than the one at the November board meeting. So not a big difference there. And then on attachment B, you will find the application workflow report for both psychologists and registered psychological associates. Please note that these data are a snapshot of open and approved application on the date the data was pulled. So basically the open application is not inclusive to the total number of application that was open on the listed month. The number of open application primarily means that those are the number of applications that in open status that was open in that month when this data was pulled on January 16th, 2024. So looking on the psychologist application workflow report, you will notice an increased trend for the open application for exam eligible for each OP and initial application for psychology licensure, which are the first and the last transaction types on the chart. It is common to have a higher number of open application in the more recent month because the board process application and dates receive order. So for clarification purposes, the initial application for psychology licensure transaction, which is used to process the request for initial licensure application, is also being used as a follow-on transaction to the exam eligible for each OP transaction. And that's just a board business process. To explain that in further details, this might be a little bit technical, but and our current business process is that upon approving an exam eligible for each OP transaction, we immediately open the initial application for psychology transaction for that particular applicant. The reason that we use the initial application for psychology licensure as a follow-on transaction is primarily to automate the process of keeping track of the 12-month exam eligibility. So I want to highlight that in the more recent months, like October through December 2023, you will see a correlation with the number of approved application for exam eligible for each OP and open application for initial application for psychology licensure transaction, since they are a follow-on transaction. And again, it is important to note that the high number of open initial application for psychology licensure shown on this chart doesn't necessarily mean we have a high number of initial psychology licensure to process, but more so that we have approved a high number of exam eligible for each WPP transaction. And then moving to the psychological associate, there is a decreased number of initial application in December. That is typical as we have observed in the winter season. And as we previously observed, the number of the psychological associates application will start to pick back up in the beginning of spring. And then on attachment C, it provides the number of new application and notification received in the last 12-month period. In comparison to the same 12-month period in 2022, there is a decrease of 58 psychologist application, 32 psychological associate application, and an increase of 127 psychological associates notification. And to specify what the notification are, it is the request to change supervisor or service location for a registered psychological associate. Then on attachment D, it provides a 6-month overview of average application processing timeframe and business days. The processing timeframe are available and updated on the board's website approximately every 2 weeks. The monthly average application processing timeframe provided on this attachment is based on the first set of data collected for each month. So from this chart, the psychologist application processing timeframe had an increased trend during the holiday season, but the most recent data in January show a decrease for the psychologist application, and the psychological associate application processing timeframes are pretty similar to the psychologist as well, that there was an increase during the holiday season and then jumped back down in January. Okay, and that will conclude the licensing report. So I would be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. It's great information, so detailed. Committee members, do you have any questions? No? Okay. Let's open the box for public comment to see if anyone in our public members who are attending our meeting have any questions or would like to have any clarifications on the information presented.
This is the moderator, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A and hand raise features to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment, you can click on the hand icon, typically at the bottom of the WebEx screen or behind the 3-dot other options if you're on a cell phone. And if you are a call-in user, you may press *3 to raise your hand. The other option is to click on the question mark icon, again, typically in the lower right of your WebEx computer screen or behind the 3-dot other options if you're on a mobile device, and type the word comment into that text box and click send. And again, apologies to Thomas Wells. I see you have your hand up, but I see you do not have an audio connection. So at this point, you will need to look for the question mark icon and type your comment in at that point. Let's see, I have a question in the Q&A box from James Henry Willis. Is the licensing report available on the board's website and/or was it attached to the agenda?
Yes, it is. I think it was attached to the agenda. Although, Ms. Chung, can you answer that for sure?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Harpsheets. The meeting materials are posted online on the board meeting calendars on the board website. So you will be able to find it when you find the meeting days, and then to the right of the table, then you will be able to see a link for agenda materials, and then that's where you will get access to those materials on the website.
And that stands for regular board meeting materials also. You can
Correct.
do the same.
Thank you. And our next is a raised hand from E. Ann Gimple. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You should see that as a pop-up on your computer. And if you do not see it, you can look for the question mark icon and type your comment into that comment box. And our apologies, it does not look like... Oh, thank you for letting us know you hit the wrong button by mistake. Fair enough, I'll lower your hand for you. That was easy.
Okay.
There are no further comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
And back to the committee, any questions or comments at this point? Hearing none, let us move on to the continuing education, professional development, and renewals.
Hi. So for renewals between January 2023 through December 2023, 78% of psychologists renewed as active, and approximately 91% of psychologists and psychological associates renewed their license online using Breeze per month. The CE CPD audits were sent out for June 2023 through December 2023. The pass rate stands at 58%. However, it is worth noting that 18% of audits are pending completion, and we get about 5 to 10 audits who try to complete their 36 hours using CPD every month, and there was a 96% pass rate for those using CPD. So that's some good news.
Yeah.
This concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, committee members, do you have any questions for Ms. McCochran?
It's time.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
No.
Hi, this is Board Member Nystrom. I just had one question on the continuing education audits. For November, it shows that there were 25 licensees, only 4% passed, and then 32% have not yet been received. That number doesn't quite get to 100%. I wasn't sure if there was a typo with the 4%.
Sorry, yeah, so that just, I didn't include in that the number of have sent it in, but I haven't gotten to reviewing them yet.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that.
Sorry.
So the columns won't necessarily add up to 100% when it's a recent month. Is that correct, Ms. McCochran?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Dr. Tate, any question you might have? No? Okay. Could we please open for public comment?
Certainly. This is the moderator, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A and hand raise features for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment into that text box there, and click send. And let's see, we do have, I believe this might have been a late comment on the previous agenda item. Dr. Hao Song asks, what requirements and exam for PTT?
Okay. Ms. Chung, could you comment? Could you respond to that?
Yes. So for the PTT, there's no exam requirement. PTT stands for the Psychological Testing Technician, the newest category that we oversee. So this group of registrants has a very limited scope regarding testing only. And then there's no examination requirement. And then we require a qualified degree. The minimum is a bachelor, is specified in statute. And then we also require 80 hours minimum of training as specified in statute. And then I think this is from Dr. Song, right? If you would like to have the specific statutory language, please email Bob Licensing, and I could provide you with the link to the statutory language for reference.
Okay, thank you.
And the next question is from Sheila Clark. Writes, the meeting agenda does not have a link for any of the reports. I could not locate them on the BOP website. Sorry, could directions be more specific? Not sure what you'd like to do with that comment.
Yeah, well, Ms. Chung, maybe, I mean, my recollection is that there is a link, so I'm not sure if it's missing this time, or do you have any idea about that, Ms. Chung?
Yes, I can provide some further direction about that. If you are on a computer able to access the board's website, so on the home page to the right, you will see quick hits kind of towards the bottom of the page on the right. And then the first bullet, it says board meetings. If you click on that, it will bring you to our board meeting event calendar for 2024. And then in the second table, that is about licensure committee. And then under agenda/materials, if you click on the materials link, it should open a PDF file for you, which all the meeting materials are posted there.
Great, thank you. Okay.
And again, we do have a raised hand from Thomas Wells. I apologize that you don't have an audio connection showing, so I'm not able to unmute you. Again, if you can look for the question mark icon and type your comment in that box and click send. There are no other questions on this portion of the reporting. Shall I close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we will move on to item 5C, the examination report. Ms. Snyder will give that for us.
Hello, good morning. So for exams for 2023, the overall pass rate is 39.22%, with an overall first-time pass rate of 59.88%. For the year 2023, we had the highest pass rate we had was back in March. And then you will see the table. It shows a gradual decrease and giving us an overall pass rate of 39.22%. You'll also have a chart available that shows you the the overall pass rates for the past 3 years from 2020 through 2023. And you'll see that the range of overall pass rates are between 30% to 50%. For the CPLEE, you'll see an overall pass rate of 78.85%, and the overall first-time pass rate is 80%. So the CPLEE pass rates for the past 30 years is more consistent with no noticeable deviation. We have a higher pass rate than the EPPP. Pass rate ranges between 64% to 88%, and you also have the chart that shows, the pass rates for from 2020 through 2023. The one other thing that I didn't include, aside from the report from OPES, after this report, the factors that affect pass rates in California for the EPPP, they're going to be providing that report after this, after my report. They're also going to be providing the feasibility of a state-owned knowledge base exam in lieu of the EPPP as requested by Mr. Fu to be presented at the August 2024 board meeting. That concludes my report. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Snyder. Committee members, any questions on this report? Okay, let's open the box for public comment.
I do see Executive Officer Sorek has her hand up.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Ms.
perhaps
Sorek?
not.
No?
Hi, Dr. Harbsheets. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Snyder. This is her last month with the board as she will be retiring from state service, where she has been employed for the past 20 or so years. And I just want to thank her for all of her hard work, presentations to the board, and yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge Ms. Snyder at this time.
Oh, thank you so much. I was not aware, but I appreciate how responsive you've always been. We've always had so many questions about APA versus non-APA schools and pass rates, and you've always gotten the answers for us and so quickly. And I appreciate that and wish you all the best in your retirement.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, do we have any public comment?
And this is the moderator. One moment while I open up the WebEx Q&A and hand raise features to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment on this report, you may look for the hand icon in the bottom row of the computer screen or behind the 3-dot other options on a mobile device and click that to raise your hand. Our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hand, or you can look for the question mark icon. Again, if you're on a mobile device, it may be behind the 3-dot other options. Otherwise, typically it's in the lower right of your computer screen. Type the word comment into the text box and click send. And let's see, we do have some raised hands and some typed questions. Let's see, one moment while I All right. So I think this is a pretty straightforward Naga Kasarabada. Want to relay congratulations to Ms. Snyder. Lillian Sword mentions I am not seeing the charts that are being referred to, and that is because they are not being displayed during the meeting. We offered instructions on how to get to the attachments on the Board of Psychology website. Let's see here. Now, in order received, we have a hand raise from Judith Greco-Gregory. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hello, I was just wondering if you had any evidence or anecdotal evidence on have pass rates decreased over the past few years and any impact of the pandemic?
Okay. Ms. Snyder, can you respond to that? I don't hear anything, Ms. Snyder. And
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So the next agenda item from OPES, they'll be presenting the factors affecting the pass rates for the EAAA. They're going to talk about APA versus non-APA, the schools, age, how age plays into it, et cetera. So I would hold on to wait for that presentation.
And I think you'll see impacts from the pandemic also in
That's
that.
correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. Next question.
Yes, next question is from, next request for comment is from Dr. Hao Song, and I will be sending you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted.
Thank you for this opportunity. I really want to also say thank you, Ms. Slider, for your great working with us to get the results of all these registration. Really appreciate your collaboration with us, and congratulations on your new page of your life.
Thank you very much.
Sure. In terms of the performance, I do want to comment. we see a decreasing trend. I will attribute that to pandemic, because this year, 2020, this recent complete year of 2023, we are working on that data. We'll include that data in our upcoming, the ASPPB upcoming doctoral report. So we had some preliminary data showed that 23 probably still has some lingering negative impact from pandemic. So that's the trend. And but stay tuned for that recent 5 years doctor report to be released in April. And another thing, maybe a little ahead of the next item, is we reported on the accredited program and lumps them together for all non-accredited programs. So the consistent difference kind of factor about the difference is or whether people from accredited versus not accredited program. And as we know, there are about 20% differences in nationally and internationally in their performance. And those people from non-credit program in the published report released last April, the drop in performance was much more than the accredited, like accredited program passing rate, first-time passing rate is about 80. During pandemic was 76, but for non-credit was 53 for the normal years, but during pandemic was 40.
Dr. Song, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I just think that's really important information and will help us to understand our next agenda item. So could you share some of that when we're talking about that report that we will have next?
Sure.
Okay,
sure. So that's all my comments. Really appreciate your looking closely into your state performance data. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, do we have another question or comment?
Yes, we do. We have another comment from James Henry Willis about finding the data discussed. So I'm going to attempt to share the website location so that
I see
everyone.
Didn't he say, sorry, I found it?
Okay, that it's under the meetings and the materials.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Good. Thanks for showing that. Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. So our next, we do have a couple more congratulations for Ms. Snyder from Adam Alban and Paul Matuzzi. And let's see. Alyssa Cohen asks, while it is understandable that the BOP does not have any influence over the ASPBB, what is this committee's analysis as to why there has been a decrease in pass rates of EPPP specifically?
So that's a good question that we will talk about in our next agenda item. So let's hold that until then.
Perfect. Again, Sheila Clark has mentioned, I was referring to the document entitled Notice of the Licensure Committee Teleconference Meeting. Agenda is listed, no links. Are the reports at another location? Hopefully our instruction has helped.
Okay.
And then Alyssa Cohen added, in addition to my previous question, does the BOP have any plan to assist in mitigation of this decrease?
Okay, so we'll talk about that in the next item too.
Perfect. And let's see. Dr. Emily Morales asks, is there a way for the data to show the data between APA versus regionally accredited individuals passing the EPPP? Or how do you differentiate between the two pools of test-taking candidates? And then you mentioned you will address in the next part, so I'm willing to wait.
Yes, we will definitely do that. Great.
All right.
Okay.
And again, Thomas Wells, I apologize. You have your hand up, but we do not have an audio connection. If you cannot access the Q&A feature, you may simply end up needing to email the board. At this time, there are no further questions or raised hands.
Okay,
Would you like
great.
to close that feature?
Yes, please
Thank
do.
you.
And I would like us to take a 15-minute break. It's 11:34, and let's come back at, let's see, at 5 minutes till 12 and take our next agenda item. Is that 15 minutes? Yes. No, 10 minutes still. No, sorry.
Come back at 11:50.
At 11:50, right.
Yes.
Come back at 11:50. Perfect. Thanks, Dr. Tate. And we will, because we have a very interesting report next, and we've been together for an hour and a half, and I think it's time for a break. So I'll see you back at 11:50. It is 11:50 and time to come back from our break. We will start with agenda item 6, and we have someone from the Office of Professional Examination Services who will give us a presentation. Oh, Dr. Tate.
Don't forget to take the roll.
Yes, we will start with the roll. Thank you. Ms. Proto, can you start to take the roll so we make sure we have a quorum? We are all back.
Thank you. Harb Sheets.
Here.
Nystrom.
Here.
Tate.
Here.
Great.
You have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will have a presentation on a topic we have been looking at and thinking about and talking about for quite some time, and that is what is going on examination performance between APA accredited versus non-APA accredited programs. So I'm not sure who is here from OPES, but Robert Calvert, thank you. If you could start, we're really looking forward to this.
Audio test with everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Oh, great.
Alrighty. Well, I'll just get past this. I do want to briefly introduce Dr. Heidi Linser. She's the chief of OPES. She's here with me. So if questions relate to her side of things, she might pipe in as well. With that said, we're going to briefly go over the purpose of this presentation. I'll talk about the variables that we were looking at, how I prepared the data. Then we're going to go through a whole pile of charts and trends, and we'll finish up with questions.
Great.
So OPS is the Office of Professional Examination Services. And the first purpose of today is to really just examine APA versus non-APA schools, their pass rates over the last 20 years. So I'm going to talk about the data for just a second. We have a whole large pile of data. I've got a slide on that. That data was provided by the board, and I appreciate that time and energy. So I want to speak briefly about the different variables we're going to look at and how I defined them. So APA schools are coded as of APA for today. So if a school changed its APA accreditation over the last 20 years, it's still marked as APA because I wasn't able to identify that. And it's an accredited program, to be clear. The school is the school that the candidate attended in order to qualify for the examination, in this case the EPPP, again as represented by the board's files. The variable Alliant may seem interesting. The reason I used Alliant is Alliant is a very large school. They take up a large number of candidates over time, and I was able to use them as a comparison to non-Alliant. Alliant is APA accredited. Age was done in a way that may be slightly confusing, so I want to speak about it briefly. That's to say, I took the age of everyone who took the test, and then I broke it into equal eighths based off of the number of attempts. So it isn't what we would think of as like a standard age range, and I'll get more into that in a moment. But the reason for that, and I'll explain later, is that we have this giant conglomeration of people right at the beginning who are all taking it, and there's differences in age there. And then as we keep on proceeding down, there continues to be differences in age. And then last, I analyzed by degree, which was PhD, PsyD, and EDD. My arrow does not. All right, this is my, to me, funny slide of where I started. I had a whole pile of data. I wasn't sure where we were going with it, and I needed to clean that data. It's important to me as a data person to explain to you what I did to clean that data and how I came up with the results I came up with. So we started off with 58,000 entries. From that, I whittled it down to 41,000 entries, which were just the EPPP because we also got the CPLE exam. Then from 41,000, it went down to 34,000, getting rid of duplicate entries, which is to say the same person on the same day with the same result. One entry, not two. Then we got rid of everyone who had a score, and this is a scaled score of 200 or less. So you get a scaled score of 200 if you do not take the test. So we just got rid of them from the analysis. And that brought us down to 28,000, which was our final sample size. And again, over the years of 2002 to roughly 2022, we got this data in the middle of 23, but like our complete year is 22. All right. So unfortunately, this is what I just explained, but these are some of the things I did to the data. I consolidated degree codes. We had different codes that basically meant the same thing. I did get rid of entries that didn't have birth dates. There were not very many of those, and that's kind of what I just ran through for you. And then I combined schools together that changed their names over time. Okay. This is minorly complex, so I want to talk about this for a little while. Every analysis I ran, I did 3 different ways. The first is by the candidate's first attempt. That's pretty industry standard. That's how most people report the results. I also run analysis by a candidate best, which is the best score an individual ever gets on this examination. Now, clearly, if they only took it once and they passed, their best score is their first attempt. But if they took it 5 times and passed on their 5th attempt, the candidate best only records the 5th attempt. In other words, it's a measurement of the final outcome for a person, for a candidate. Did they or did they not eventually pass, in effect? And the last level is by attempt. So that same person who passed on their 5th attempt, if we analyze by attempt, would have 5 entries. They took the test 5 times. So their first attempt would have been a fail, the candidate best would have been a pass, and their pass rate by attempt would have been 20% because they passed once, obviously, and they took it 5 times. Okay. I'm going to start just speaking generically about the trend over time without deaggregating or separating it in any way. So this is your average score for first attempts over time. 500 is passing. 500 is passing across this board. It is a scaled score. So we went from a period up to about 2015 there, where the average score for a first attempt was well above passing, to currently a point where the average attempt is roughly passing. Now, I want to be very clear, this is only California candidates, because I got this data from the California board, so I cannot speak to any national trends. And again, this was my first attempt. I'm not going to talk about best attempt. Remember, I said I was going to do this. The reason I say best attempt is you'll notice that even though it's still dropping down, that best attempt ends at 545. In other words, well above passing. So we're going to see throughout this that most people eventually pass. The number of attempts it takes is a different question. And then our all attempts, you'll notice, is well below passing. In other words, the average just across every time a person takes the test is close to 460, where 500 is a pass. You have to get right up into the middle of this graph in order to get to passing by attempt. In other words, again, we have a large number of attempts that are not passes, and those people keep attempting. Okay, so now I'm going to talk just about the number of people who are attempting the test. This is just a count. So the blue line on the top is the number of attempts. The yellow line is how many of those passed. The distance between those two is really the number of people that failed. And as you watch this over time, roughly speaking, that distance, it gets a little bit larger here, but it's remaining somewhat consistent. But I just want to point out we have this large influx of attempts in this 2015 to 2020 range, and the passes went up accordingly. And then our total number of attempts dropped down a little bit, and our passes dropped as well. Okay. I'm just going to go back and forth between these. Remember that the distance between the two lines are the people who attempt but don't pass. Large-ish distance on first attempts, very close to each other on best attempt. In other words, most people eventually pass this examination. A question of how long it takes them to pass is a different thing. Okay. Now all attempts. These are not close to each other at all. In other words, we have moved to a stage where there's a very high fail rate simply measured by a person took the test. On this attempt, do they pass or fail? And that has grown over time. That's why I separate these out into these three different categories so we can see what's going. All right, and my last historical trend is by pass rate. We started in 2002 with a pass rate on first attempts above 80%. We hovered around between 75 and 70 till about 2015, and we've recently dropped down into the 60s for the first attempt, again, California data. But now let's look at best attempts. Well, best attempt pass rates have been roughly in the 90s until relatively recently, at which point they dropped 86%. Well, we might ask, why is that? And why did I stop at 2020? I want to answer that. The reason I stopped my data at 2020 here is this is measuring a best attempt. If I don't give you a time to take attempt again, I'm measuring your first attempt. So I stopped back in 2020 so that these people have had time to take their attempts. Your pass rate for all attempts moved from 70% in 2002 all the way down to 40%, less than 40% now. And here are just some general observations over all of those things. Number one, number of candidates increased over time and then recently has decreased, but it did increase over time. The pass rate has decreased over time, no matter which way you cut it. But it's still true that the best attempt is likely going to be a pass. And the average score has decreased over time. Now, for the point of this presentation, we'll just get it out of the way quickly. This is breaking down. The blue line is APA. The yellow line is not APA. This is your average score. They have remained relatively close throughout most of history and have been now pretty different in the very recent past. As was pointed out earlier, that's also in COVID era. So the overall message of this data is that there isn't apparently a substantial difference between APA and not APA prior to 2020, and that difference has grown in the recent past. Of course, I can't prove that that is because of COVID, but it is a trend that we can observe. This was by first attempt. Here's your pass rate by first attempt. Again, your pass rate between APA and not APA overlap largely until recently, but that difference is not super large, right? 60-something% to 55%. And there were times, not very many, where the not APA pass rate is actually higher than the APA pass rate over history. And now we have the number of candidates, and I'm going to stay on the slide longer than I should. The number of APA candidates is incredibly larger than the number of not APA candidates now. That was not always the case, but it is certainly the case now. The not APA pool makes up a very small portion of our testing population by first attempt. That's an important thing to remember when we're considering these differences and a possible explanation of difference in pass rate being due to APA. Here's your score by best attempt. Score by best attempt, again, stays very close to each other until relatively recently, but even recently, it's not. We're still above passing for both groups. And now, pass rate. The pass rate was again in the 90s throughout time for both APA and not APA. Recently, that pass rate has dropped, and there's about an 80% for APA and a 70-ish% for not APA. Okay, and this is again just showing you the number of candidates is much larger for APA and will continue to be. the score by APA, and this is all attempts, both groups now are below passing. This is where we're talking about all attempts. Well, why does it keep on going down with all attempts? Because people who fail continue to be likely to fail until they pass. So that's the other hand of this, is most people eventually pass. Okay. And then pass rate by all attempts. Again, please just notice these two lines stay relatively close to each other through time. Okay, that's my number of candidates. Again, it's much higher there. Okay. APA observations. Yes, APA programs score slightly better than non-APA programs, but they overlap largely in pass rates through most of the measures. And the number of candidates for APA programs is considerably larger than non-APA programs, no matter which way you measure it. However, the trend for both groups has been to a lower pass rate over time. And very recently, that difference has gotten larger. Okay. So now I tried to impress upon you that it doesn't seem like APA really explains the difference in pass rate. Is there a difference? Yes, but it's not very large. Let's talk about schools. I want to be clear, I'm not calling out schools here in any positive or negative way. The stuff is published, but rather to indicate some trends that exist. So here are a few schools that I was able to pull some data for and discuss with you. That top green line is a UC. Now, it's not one UC, that is all UCs combined together. I'm going to get ahead of myself. All UCs account for approximately 20 candidates a year. Very, very small number of people, and they do very well. Okay. You have the Wright Institute of Berkeley. Throughout time, they've done pretty well. That red line, it stayed pretty consistent. And then you have Alliant. I'll get ahead of myself, but Alliant takes up a large number of your candidate pool, and it has moved historically from an average score of 550 down to an average score of about 500. You will recall that the passing is 500, so that it's right on the edge now on its average. And then the Chicago school is well below passing on average and also takes up a relatively large number of candidates. Okay, this one's a little nasty looking, so I just want to translate for you. At the top, you have UCs, which have a 100% pass rate. You have Palo Alto, but you have this kind of grouping up here in the 90 to 80% first-time pass rates for many schools. And then you go down to Alliant. Well, Alliant's first-time pass rate's about 50%. And then you go to Chicago School. Chicago School's first-time pass rate is about 25%. Again, if we're looking at all of these schools, the two schools that have the most students are Alliant and Chicago School. Here's my graph for you of the number of students by school. Alliant is this top blue line, and everything else is below. You've got Chicago School, which is the second highest there, and then Palo Alto University, which is about the same. Then this smattering of all of these tiny things below, less than 10-ish, 20-ish per year. That's a lot of other schools that have way fewer candidates coming through. All right, looking at best attempt. Your best attempt as we move through. Alliant's best attempt is above passing. Chicago School's best attempt right now is not. It's right at the edge. And Wright Institute's above passing. So again, we have this trend that the UCs are outperforming, and Wright, Alliant's doing better than passing, and Chicago's doing worse. Okay. Again, I want your best rate pass rate. So you've got these schools that all clump up here in this 90 to 100%. And then Alliant, Chicago, in the same order we've seen in every other graph we've run. Now, some interesting things to note is Alliant moved from a 95% back in 2002 through time down to an 80. Well, that's still 80% of those people eventually passing, but I want to point out that they have changed. Whereas the UCs are still pretty high. We're breaking these down. Okay. Same data, same colors. You'll notice Alliant and Chicago is below, and you've got this like conglomeration of the better schools at the top. Those better schools have very, very few students. All right, observation here. There is a clear relationship between schools and performance on the exam. The trend isn't the same though. Some schools kept their level of performance through the entire data set, where other schools changed. They moved from being, higher performing down to lower performing. Very few schools improved and went from lower performing to higher performing. The candidate pool is important to notice. Alliant has more students than the next 5 largest schools. And every UC school combined takes up about 30 attempts a year. That's attempts, not even first-time attempts. Okay. Well, since I just called out Alliant, let's talk about Alliant in comparison to everyone else. So this is just a combination of Alliant versus not Alliant. By score, they started off similarly. Both have moved down, and Alliant is below not Alliant on first attempt. This is the pass rate by Alliant versus not Alliant on your first attempt, and they were similar through time and have now separated out. But again, you're talking a 50% to a 60%, not a huge. It's not that Alliant is this very low performing school. They're kind of average. They're a little bit worse than the average number of candidates. They just take up a large number of candidates. So this is just the number of candidates from Alliant versus everyone else. And as you'll note, through time, Alliant's actually now taking up a much smaller share of the total candidate pool than it did earlier in the history of this data. So even though I'm saying Alliant is considerably larger than everybody else, though that's true, in the first attempt category, they're taking up a smaller percentage than they used to. This is your best attempt, and again, Alliant slightly below. It's the same pattern as we analyze in different ways, but the best attempt is still above passing. And the pass rate for Alliant versus not Alliant is intertwined the whole way through. A takeaway of this is we shouldn't be blaming Alliant here. We just should understand that there are considerably higher performing schools and that they have way less students than Alliant does. And this is score by all attempt. And again, they really match each other pretty well throughout time. It's just that now the score by an attempt is well below passing. And this is the pass rate through all attempts, again, overlapping throughout. My line observations. It seems that non-Alliant does slightly better than Alliant. Alliant pretty much follows the trend a little bit below. Well, that's a lot better than it could be for a school that takes up a very large candidate pool. As time passed, performance for both of the groups decreased. When we aggregated at this level, it's clear to see that either way, it's going down. And through time, Alliant has considerably less first-time attempts now than they did in the past. In other words, their market share has decreased. Okay. Age analysis. This one's got a lot of lines, so I'm going to take a moment. First, looking at the bottom here, this seems to many to be a very strange legend. So I want to talk about it, albeit briefly. The reason that it's broken up into these ranges is I separated out all of the data by attempt into 8 equal groups. So it's kind of a stratification rather than just measuring age by the number of years. And the reason you want to do that is you want to see differences in like underlying patterns across time that aren't necessarily going to be captured when you just make 5 or 10 year intervals, though they could be. So you'll notice here that the first 3 age groups are all doing pretty well. They're clumped together there. They were clumped together throughout time at the end. And that's ages 19 to 34. Now, how many 19-year-olds are taking the EPPP? 2. But that's why we just clump all of that together. And in all of that group, those are doing well. Well, we can kind of think about, what does that mean? What are those students like? Well, those are students who likely followed the track through. They probably went through, got their bachelor's degree, got their master's degree, got their doctorate, went through the test, but they're doing the things. They're staying on the track. And then we drop down somewhat considerably to 35 to 36. And you say, whoa, why is that? It's not that many more years, but there is a drop. Okay, and 37 to 40, still a drop. Okay, well, what's different about that population? We can guess what happened in that group, but they didn't like just immediately stay on. Maybe they took a little bit of time off in the middle. Like who knows what they did? But they are different from that first group of three who are finishing up and taking it by 34. And we can kind of just imagine what your life looks like if you have a doctorate by 34. You probably just stayed on track, did everything. The pattern continues to decrease throughout time, following age, until we get down to this 54 to 80 group, which is doing considerably lower than the rest. Okay. So pass rates. The last one was score. Here's your pass rate. Again, you have that top three, which are all clumped together right now. You then have that next group of age, which is kind of in the middle here, the 60s. And then you have those who are in the older groups who are doing considerably worse. This is by first time attempt. I want you to recall that I broke this down by attempts. So this group 54 to 80 takes the test in the same number of times as every other group here. All right. Now, the number of candidates by age first attempt. Well, we've got lots of people in that first group, first attempt, that are taking it. Okay, and the same pattern is going to move through, but you see those first two being a large portion of your population. Now we're measuring people. There are relatively few people in the ages of 54 to 80, but they take the test a lot. They don't pass a lot, but they take the test a lot. You'll notice that there actually aren't that many first attempts in the 35 to 36 category, nor in the 37 to 40 category. Well, that's kind of interesting as we break this down. We'll keep on moving. And this is pass rate for first attempt. Okay, your pass rate's considerably higher for your first three groups. It continues to go down. Okay, this one's a mess. What I want to point out for you is that gray line is not at the bottom anymore. It's right up here at close to 200. That population, which passes the test at about 30%, is taking the test a lot, as is the group right before them at 46 to 53. So we have older candidates who are not passing at a high percentage, but continue to take the test. Recall that they likely will eventually pass, but they'll actually eventually pass at a lower rate too when we get to that data. Here's your pass rate by all attempts, and this oldest group has a very low pass rate when you just measure by attempt. But our trend is continuing in the same way it was before. The youngest group is doing best, following down in a nice convenient pattern. I would like to point out, which I haven't, let me go back a second, I'm sorry to do this to you, that there is something interesting I meant to say and didn't. Let's look back to 2002. I've been really interested in what's happening right now, but the point of this was a time comparison. So when we look back to 2002, pass rate for that oldest group on their first attempt was 70%. Well, now it's less than 30. We can make some conjecture as to what might have happened over those 20 years, but it's unlikely that, being older now disproportionately harms your ability to take a test much more than it did then. All right. And speaking about age, I'm going to get to the last one, which is important. First, as age increases, overall score tends to decrease. Second, as time passed, performance decreased for all groups. The number of candidates decreases as age increases. Seems reasonable. And the last one is this bias? and I want to say this a few times, difference is not bias. I can give a whole presentation on why difference isn't bias. That's not this presentation. But we have in no way run enough analysis here to be able to say in any way, shape, or form that this test is ageist or biased against older people. We just don't know. We don't have the ability to control and compare. We can say that their outcomes are different, but we don't know anything about their preparation or the ways to make a fair comparison between the different groups. And we can all probably grant that the 33 or 34-year-old has had a different set of life experiences than the 55-year-old who is also taking the test at the same time. I'm just going to say it one more time. Difference is not bias. Please do not take from that presentation that this test is ageist or that the test is biased against older candidates. We just don't know. We cannot know from this data. All right, analysis by degree. Score by degree code, PhDs outperform PsyDs, EDDs score lower. Now the important slide. The number of EDDs taking this test is exceptionally low. And PsyDs now have more people taking the test than PhDs. That's what I just said. All right, a summary for you. I would say that there is evidence that this test has changed over time. And is likely more difficult now than it was in 2002. The school a candidate attends is a strong predictor of examination performance. Most candidates attend APA accredited programs. That's very important. Right now, most people come from APA. And those candidates do slightly better than those in non-APA accredited programs. But it is insufficient to explain our difference in pass rates. Older candidates pass the examination at lower rates and account for a large proportion of recent attempts. And degree type has become slightly stronger. In other words, PhDs are doing a little better now than they were before. But overall, they're similar to each other, and EDDs have too small of a sample to evaluate. Thank you. And does the board have any questions for me?
Thank you so much. It's so useful for us who've been talking about this issue, but not having this kind of data to understand what is really happening. And I appreciate what you're saying about difference not being biased, that we have to be very careful not to make that assumption when we see these differences. And I really appreciate that. Let me ask committee members, do you have any questions or comments that you would like to make?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Calvert. That was amazing. I love looking at this data, and we've been talking about it in a nebulous form, but now you have numbers and it's tangible. I have a question, and you probably are predicting it a little bit. Is there any takeaways, and I'm not a numbers guru, but I could see there were drop-offs 2019, 2020 as well. Can we extrapolate anything regarding COVID, or we're not touching that with this data?
Well, we all know that COVID happened at that time. It's definitely circumstantial. But I'll pull this slide up because I think it gets to what you're asking about. I guess what I would point out to you is that it had decreased pretty substantially before 2019.
Yeah, you were saying in 2015 it started to
Well,
dip, right?
yeah, and 2015 is where it starts going down. Now, it does go down from 2019 to 20 through. So I would argue that anyone who's lived through COVID understands that that's a piece of this question.
Yeah.
Were I to interpret this data, I would say that that was a trend that pre-existed COVID.
Okay, so 2015 is where you would say, hey, this is where, the data indicates 2015 is where it's the test changed or got more difficult.
Where something happened that changed the outcomes of the test.
We don't know if the test changed or if something changed societally or something changed with the schools or what.
There's a shift.
There is certainly a shift. I, of course, have an opinion on what I think happened there, but I try to leave that out of these.
Oh,
of course, kind of
I was gonna say, I would like to hear your opinion.
I would too. I would actually too. What
I'll
is
look
your?
and see if my boss has an opinion on my opinion.
Oh, okay.
She doesn't appear to yet. I'll give her 30 seconds before I.
Okay.
I'll give my opinion.
Okay.
I believe that there is enough evidence to support a hunch that the test has changed over time, that there is a difference in what the test is examining from 2002 to 2022. My strongest reason for that belief is actually looking at our oldest age group and watching them drop from the 70% down to the 30%. That again is, my boss just answered. That's my answer for you. I'm sorry. That's my humble opinion there.
We realize it's speculation.
Yes, definitely speculation.
Beyond that, but it's a a really fair point, because we don't know societally. I can't think of anything societally that changed at that point in time, or with the schools. There isn't anything obvious that we know with the schools that we're aware of anyway. But yeah. So
I would like to add that EPP is in a position to answer that question much better than I am.
Oh, of course. Yes.
And would encourage them to do so at their convenience.
Yeah. I think Dr. Song is actually on this, and she may have, when we open up for a comment, she may have something to share with us on that. So,
I would remind you again that this is only California data.
Right.
So what the things that she's seen, if they are analyzed at a national level, may not reflect the same trends.
Yeah, she may be able to tell us something about how, if the test has changed in any way.
She may, yeah.
Yeah.
Other questions on things that are not my opinion?
Yeah. Maybe Ms. Nystrom or Dr. Tate, do you have any more questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Calvert. That was amazing. I really love the data.
Yeah, it's so true that, as Dr. Tate said, we've been talking about this in a very nebulous, kind of vague way, and this really gives us something to talk about more concretely. Very helpful. Okay, and Ms. Nystrom, I didn't hear you had any questions, comments?
I don't have any questions, but the data was certainly helpful and informative, and I appreciate the presentation, Mr. Calvert, so thank you.
There was another note that Jason actually just brought up for me. He said there may also be a difference in your candidate population over 20 years. It is possible that the people who are taking the test, that profile is different than the profile today. And unfortunately, I don't have data to be able to analyze it at that level.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you would wonder, like, admission rates, how they may have changed, or admission criteria in the schools, that kind of thing, which we wouldn't have either. Okay, could we please open for public comment?
Certainly, this is the moderator. And before we begin that, did you want to hear from Dr. Song first?
Yeah, in the comments section, that would be great. She can,
okay.
That would be great.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, so I'm going to open up the Q&A and the raised hand features to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment, you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand, and or you can use the question mark icon, and then in the text box that appears there, type the word comment and click send to all. And we will begin with Dr. Hao Song. I'm sending you a request to unmute your microphone. And you're unmuted. So was there a question for Dr. Song?
Oh, if Dr. Song, if you have anything you can share with us about if there's anything you know of in which the EPPP has changed in the last since 2015. You might have some awareness of that.
And Dr. Song, we are not hearing your voice. I see you're unmuted. Dr. Song, I'm afraid we are not hearing your voice.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Well, let's go to the next person, and hopefully we will hear from Dr. Song. She maybe will write in the chat, the box, and let us know what's going on.
Right, in the Q&A chat, certainly. Dr. Song, if you're having audio issues, you're certainly welcome to let us know in the Q&A. Let's see. So then let's go to the rest of the comments. Let's see. Faraz Karnomi says, thank you for the report. Noel Cooper says, in 2002, was the exam administered on computer or pencil and paper? When did that shift occur?
That would be a great question for Dr. Song to answer. And we'll hope we hear from her and we can get that information.
All right, fantastic. Dale Watson put forward the question, the comment, probably unanswerable, but does the poorer performance by older age groups suggest that this is a measure of fluid intelligence, which is known to decrease with age?
I would guess unanswerable, but let's ask Dr. Calvert.
I would second with unanswerable.
Fair enough. All right, let's see. We have a raised hand. Well, again, Thomas Wells, I see your hand raised, but you do not have an audio connection. So again, I'm going to refer you to the Q&A feature where if you click the question mark and type in the box, you can type your question in. But at this point, we don't have any way to unmute you. Let's see, Christopher Dreyer, I see a hand raised from you. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And Christopher Dreyer, did you see a pop-up come up on your computer? Oh, you're unmuted.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Hi, Christopher Dreyer. I'm on the faculty at California Institute of Integral Studies. I want to thank Dr. Calvert for the insightful analysis. I have two questions and a comment. My comment is that I think it is important to consider what construct the EPPP is assessing. And the questions are what Dr. Calvert's interpretation of the EPPP as a measure is, what is it that it's measuring? And then are the data available if we want to run our own analyses to look at the interassociations among variables? Thank you.
Dr. Calvert, would you like to answer what you can out of that? And then I see Dr. Song is still there, and we may be able to get some additional information from her.
Absolutely. So to the data question, I don't know the answer to that, if it is the policy to share or not share that data. So I'll begin there. And I'm sorry, I missed the other part of the question. I was distracted for a moment. What was the second piece?
He was asking what he thinks.
Oh, the construct. He asked if the construct was. I did not in any way analyze the construct. That would be a question for the EPPP. I believe it's a relevant question, but it's nothing I can answer.
Okay. Should we try Dr. Song again? See if we can.
Exactly. Yes. So she has indicated that she's more able now. So I've sent another request to unmute. There you go, Dr. Song.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better.
Great. First of all, thank you, Dr. Calvert for this great research. I'm a psychometrician by training. Commend for your analysis and the report. And in terms of the differences, yes, we EPPP changed the vendor in 2015 from previous kind of developer test deliver to the current Pearson view in the test development analysis and the delivery from 2015. And we also do periodically review the content of the examination through a very thorough national job task analysis to decide what to measure and what proportion of those areas on the exam. So we do that, follow the standard, the professional assessment standards to do it periodically every like 5 to 10 years. So those reports can be accessed upon request. We are planning to do a new one later this year. We are going to send out a call to recruit national representative panelists and then create the survey to survey every people, every licensed psychologist to tell us the knowledge and the skills they need to use and the frequency and the criticality. If they do not have that knowledge or skills, what will happen? Then those things translate into the test specification or exam blueprint, as some people referring to. So those things we are going to be published after this year for this year's exam blueprint review and change. So those in the past, like to answer your questions about why 2022 through 2002 through 2022 have some changes. That's something we probably want to look at to see whether the exam blueprint change and also the vendor change. But I can assure you those changes are follow the highest testing standards and professional best practice. Those changes are very defensible. So all these changes are make the exam better quality. Those items are reviewed, follow those changes to better quality, and also we rotate the exam form more frequently. And the Pearson VUE, as you all know, that's the largest test deliverer company in the world. So we can stand on those standard in the quality of the examination. So to understand more why people showing some kind of a lower trend over time, whether we increased in the volume of your schools and whether the training has some changes, we need to look that in more thorough way. But I'm glad you are looking at the data and showed some trend. But to answer your question about 2020 through now, I can see as you read the news about the education, about all the other things, even your own experience, I can definitely see the negative impact of pandemic on student performance on EPPP in your state, nationally. As I mentioned previously, our data, national data, once I break those 2017 through 2019 versus 2020 through 2022, you can see the decrease trend nationally, internationally, because I lumped the data for every program from both countries. So you can see that clear decrease trend. So for that, like a recent 2 or 3 years, including 2023, you will see that decrease trend continues in 23 as reflected by EPPP. Maybe because those people who finished or started their training right before the pandemic, but finished the ballpark of their training during those. So their performance did showed that negative impact. So yeah.
Dr. Sock,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt, but you know, when you were saying a little bit earlier that in 2015 you changed service providers, or I can't remember, you went to Pearson. Could you, I have no idea, and maybe you could just help me understand how that might have impacted scoring. I mean, I understand all the work you do on validity and, you know, looking at item analysis and that, but can you just help me understand a little bit more how that could have in any way affected how people are performing or the scores we're seeing?
Usually it will not, because we do have like a statistical way to equate the exam from now to the past to make sure like the difficulty are consistent over time. Yeah, so usually we shouldn't see this kind of, but in terms of the quality of the examination change, that I can assure you. But what I want to say is we usually, if the new exams is more rigorous in terms of measured area, that I cannot like limit, because based on the new job task analysis, new blueprint, we need to form exam to reflect the current knowledge, skill, ability we should measure, or those construct you are familiar with, we should measure. That I cannot change. But in terms of the difficulty, if say in the past, the exam may be easier, the new exam may be more difficult, that we can use a statistical way to equate to make sure people taking the new exam still kind of fair if in the past they took the old exam. That we can assure in terms of the continuity of the exam difficulty, but in terms of the knowledge measured, maybe the new exam we need to reflect the current practice.
Yeah.
So I guess my answer is yes and no.
Yeah,
right?
I understand
Because
what you're saying. It makes me even start to wonder, was there something in the physical makeup of, you know, the environment that changed, that Pearson provided versus the previous service provider? But then I know that the trend continued to decrease, so it couldn't really be that. But I was just trying to think of any possible reasons, because it was so surprising and so striking. But thank you for your input. I'm so glad you're on this meeting today so that we can get your expertise response.
nationally, I should say, we see consistently about 80% for first attempt accredited program passing rate.
You're talking
I didn't see
nationally.
a clear kind of drop in terms of nationally. It's very interesting to see California support this research, and the data showed that. I'm definitely interested in reading the report and have a side conversation with Dr. Calvert. But nationally, I can see ASPPB didn't see the decreasing trend for accredited program over years. We are seeing consistently 80% first attempt passing rate.
So you
except for the past 3 years.
Okay, so nationally you did not see a change in 2015.
No, not that kind of a big change as your data showed.
That's so interesting, isn't it? So, okay, well, that's helpful to let us know that.
Can
Let's
I
go
add
on
a point
to,
of clarification, please?
sure, sure.
I just wanted to make clear that what I was saying about it potentially changing, I wasn't saying that it was worse. A change that increases the discrimination or rigor of an examination would result in a lower pass rate.
Yes, yes.
So there's no way for me to evaluate in any way what the cause of that would be. And also the idea of equating, which Dr. Song spoke to, and I'd like to speak with her later about. I'm curious how far back they go in those equating processes.
Yeah.
But I think that might be just a side conversation.
Yeah, I mean, and we're clearly speculating, but we definitely saw something happen in 2015. It's just interesting that we see it in the California data, but Dr. Song is saying they don't see it in the national data. So it's something to really think about. But thank you. Okay, let's go to our next comment or question.
Certainly, and now that Dr. Song is back on, I didn't know if you wanted to loop back to in 2002, was the exam administered on computer or pencil and paper, and when did that shift occur?
Thank you for remembering that. Dr. Song, do you have that information?
I think at that time it's still paper pencil. I needed to go back the historical document. Sorry, I cannot kind of have a definite answer right now because I joined the ASPPP last year.
Okay.
I will get back to you. If anyone on this call knows about that, please help on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. The next comment in the Q&A is from Ann Gimple. I passed the EPBP in 1096, first try. Then the pass rate was roughly 50%. Any thoughts why it changed from 50 to 80-ish in 2002?
I guess I would ask Dr. Calvert as a statistician to
I
comment.
have no opinion.
What's that?
I'm sorry, I have no opinion. I don't have the data.
I think, yeah, I think we just don't have that data. It's just hard to know. I was just looking for you to come up with a really professional way of saying that. But okay. Yeah, I wish we did know more about that, but I just don't think we would be able to. Okay, next question.
From Gary Buck, based on this data, are there any recommendations that the board will be considering going forward?
I think it's definitely something that we will be talking about as a board. And as we've said, it's something we were interested in, we've been interested in for quite a while. That, some of this question of, there are many states that will not allow doctoral graduates to be licensed if they did not come from an APA accredited program. And we are really one of the few states. And there's been a thought that there's been a big differential in pass rates. And this information kind of shows that the differential isn't necessarily that big. And I think that consideration will be, if there's conversations about SciPact, this will be included in those conversations. And I'm sure in many other ways too. I can't specify those right now, but we will definitely use this data. Okay.
All right. Next question from James Henry Willis. Mr. Calvert, I was a bit confused over the Alliant data. Did I understand correctly that the CSPP schools were rolled into the Alliant data set?
I don't immediately, I need to check my records to see. I don't know what CSPP schools are. So the Alliant data set was in the school. So when I received the data, it's Alliant and then a location. So for example, Alliant, Sacramento. What I did was aggregate all of the Alliant schools in that way together.
Yeah. Well, the Alliant schools are part of the CSPP program, and CSPP schools offer other degrees. but the Alliance schools are the ones offering the doctoral programs in psychology.
I hope that answered your question. It sounds like Dr. Mary had a better answer than I do.
All right, thank you. Next commenter, Farmaz Karomi, says, I took the EPPP in 2015 and it was on computer. Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, just to respond to that, as far as the EPPP goes, I believe off the top of my head, we started the EPPP became computerized in 2000.
Oh,
so yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. We should have thought to ask you since you've been doing this for so long. Thank you.
Wonderful. And that is confirmed by Cindy Pakirek's comment. I took the EPPP in 2002 and it was computerized.
Great.
So that tracks. Let's see. Our next Q&A comment is from Naga Kasarabada. Do you have any data related to the preparation for the exam with any long-standing training academies that may impact pass rates? Candidates who prep through these workshops are more likely to pass, I think.
We don't have that data, but I would think that those training academies would be looking for that data, and they may actually have that. That would probably be an advertising point if the numbers are in their favor.
I would like to speak into that and say, be very skeptical of data that is provided by someone who offers a service.
That's very smart. Thank you for saying.
And the population who attends such programs is likely to be different from the general population.
Yes, thank you for qualifying what I was saying. Okay.
Next comment is from Lucy Herr. Did removing the verbal test have any impact on the pass rate?
I'm wondering, Dr. Herr, if you're thinking of the California licensing oral exam that people would take after the EPPP, and those were unrelated. The EPPP, once you pass that, you would take the California licensing orals, and they were very separate tests. And the oral exam, of course, was replaced with the CPLE, the CPLEE in California. But again, they're very separate tests.
All right, and Amanda Kim shares, thank you for sharing these stats. It's validating for me to see. I attempted the EPPP many times and finally got a passing score on my 7th attempt. I had personal circumstances affecting my testing ability the first couple of times, but after a while I was missing passing score by only a few points. It's helpful to know that I was not alone in the struggle. I'm happily licensed now and I'm grateful to be here today.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
Thank you for hanging in there.
Kelly Colbert verifies also, I believe 2002 was electronic. Catherine Lowe asks, is there a change in pass rates over time for the UCs and accredited PhD programs excluding Alliant?
I think we saw that chart, Dr.
I
Cal.
can speak to that. So first, UCs were consistently high performing through time, also consistently low candidate pool. Alliant did decrease in its pass rate over time. As for other schools individually, there are many schools, so I chose a few to indicate different patterns that existed. Generically speaking, there are schools that continued to have a high performance throughout the 20-year period. All of them were small, generally prestigious. There were no schools that consistently increased their performance over time, and there were schools who decreased their performance over time.
Okay.
I will caveat there. There may be a school who slightly increased its performance over time, but it wouldn't be a trend in the same way that things trended down.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, and let's see, from Naga Kasarbata, the switch from the oral examination for part 2 of the licensing examination versus the jurisprudence written exam, not sure when, may have increased the pass rates.
Yeah, I think it sounds like we're comparing the not the EPPP, which is what this study was looking at, but the oral exam versus the current jurisprudence exam. And just off the top of my head, from being a person who took the oral exam, that I think that the rates that we saw on the jurisprudence exam reported today, around 80% pass rate first time, is probably a better rate than what the oral exam pass rate was first time. That's from my memory. But again, the EPPP is totally separate from that.
I would add that the eventual pass rate for the CPLE is also considerably higher than that 80%.
Yeah.
People who retake until they pass, as a trend, the vast majority of people retake till they pass if they didn't pass the first time.
Yeah, and on the CPLE, I think today what we heard is the first time test taker of just the CPLE is 80%. So that, that's great, right? And it's been pretty consistent over the last few years, but it's again very separate from the EPPP. So, okay.
All right. Next comment, again, if memory serves, I took the EPPP on computer in 2002. That was from Anna Myers. Cindy Mannion asks, please look at written national stats versus California. With all the best intentions, memory of stats and the way they were broken down by the national rep may be selective and not comparative.
Okay. Yeah, I think we are, and Dr. Calvert keeps reminding us that the data we're looking at is California, and Dr. Song's data is national, which would include California, but would maybe show a different picture. So.
Correct. All right, let's see. We can touch through the next couple of, let's see. Gary Buck asks, is there any data for the California test that either follows or does not follow the EPP OATERUS? I don't know if that's a psych term.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is.
Is it possibly pass rates with a typo?
Oh, maybe, Dr. Buck, could you like rewrite again or let us know what that is in the box?
Correct. So I'll keep an eye open for his follow-up comment. Paul Matuzzi lets us know the California School of Professional Psychology, CSPP, merged with the U.S. International University, USIU, in 2001 and became Alliant.
Thank you.
2001 data is before we started collecting data.
Yeah, okay.
Great.
Let me clarify, we have the data for before 2002. It was excluded from this analysis.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Farnaz Karomi asks, do you have any idea if students will be able to take part 1 of EPPP during their doctoral degree?
Let me ask Ms. Sorick to speak about the new legislation that changes when they are able to take the EPPP.
Yes, thank you for the question. This legislative change will require a regulatory change, which the board has already approved the language to begin the regulatory process. And that regulatory language lays out the ability for one to take the exam, the part 1 of the EPPP, once they receive their qualifying degree. Ms. Chung, did you have anything else to add to that?
Thank you. I would just add to that that one could apply for the EPPP 1 exam is when they completed all the coursework for the coursework requirement for the doctoral degree, and we would need some verification from the school. But yes, that's planned to do that once the regulatory language is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. Following up, Gary Buck did let us know that, yes, he meant pass rates. So the question is there any data for the California test that either follows or does not follow the EPPP pass rate?
The historical pass rate for the CPLE is relatively stable throughout the time frame analyzed, where the EPPP, as you saw, has decreased over time. So no, they do not track each other. It's also important, very important to note that you cannot take the CPLE until you've passed the EPPP. So we have a different population of people taking one test than we do the other.
Thank you, Dr. Calvert.
And let's see again from Ann Gimple, as long as someone brought up the change in the oral exam, this is not a question, but an observation from someone who sat as an oral commissioner. I believe someone should lay eyes on candidates before they are certified for independent practice.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Emily Morales, I wanted to ask, as a regionally accredited student who already finished the non-APA education, is California planning to go 100% APA? Is that what we are hinting at?
Well, no, we are not hinting at that at all. And we, in fact, as was stated earlier in the meeting, one of the reasons that we were concerned about becoming SIPAC members was because at that point in time, people who graduated from non-APA accredited programs were not allowed to participate in SIPAC. Now they've made some changes, but we wanted to protect our licensees and people who are in non-APA programs from being shut out of something.
All right. Next question or comment is from Rita Desi. Has there been any longitudinal research regarding those who graduated from APA accredited versus non-APA accredited programs in terms of differences in professional practice? For context, many of us graduated from specialized programs, and thus even if we attended an accredited school, our program was not APA accredited, but we have been successfully practicing for years.
Okay, I don't know of any research. Oh, Dr. Calvert, were you going to comment on that?
I do want to comment. I don't have an answer for your question, but I have a caveat that I want to go into. It isn't the purpose of licensure examinations to predict future performance in the field. Rather, it is to establish minimal competency for entering the field. So from our point of view, we would say that that isn't a good use of the tests that we develop or the EPPP to try to predict whether or not you are an excellent or simply good counselor. A good way to think about that is a DMV test for a driver is not trying to qualify you for being a race car driver. It's simply saying if you can be safe on the road. And saying that if you did better on the DMV test, you're more likely to be a race car driver isn't a good use of that examination. That doesn't mean the research can't be done. It's just it's not our paradigm. It's not the way that our examinations, either the EPPP or those developed by OPES, function.
Thank you,
and for reference to that, you'd have the standards, which I could get for you if you want to reference.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, Robert. Yeah, that's exactly the EPPP should be evaluated, or your jurisprudence exam should be evaluated. We are not predicting. Yeah, we as a licensure assessment, we want to have that threshold to make sure people entered this profession will meet this minimum competence to practice, but we are not predicting who is going to be the greatest psychologist, those things. And also, I just digged out the history of paper, pencil to computer. That's May 2001.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I think that with Dr. Desi's question too, I think she's looking maybe beyond the idea of the exam into how the difference of APA and non-APA, and are there feelings that if people graduated from a non-APA school, they're not going to do as well in practice? And I think many of us in the field have certainly seen that not at all to be an issue. And I would agree that we've seen many people successfully practicing who graduated from non-APA as well as APA. It just doesn't seem to really be a difference, just in my own anecdotal experience in this field. And I've been in this field for quite a while. So
I have a fun anecdote for our humor. The highest score across the 20 years
yeah.
was from a non-APA school.
Okay, that's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, do we have any other questions?
I also want to say two more things. One is the cumulative passing rate, as the research find out. That's a very important indicator too. People nowadays, they use the first attempt not as serious. I don't know whether that's the situation with California, but we did see the cumulative passing rate after second attempt or third attempt did show the as Dr. Caveat find out, it's about 90%. So that's important to know, both accredited versus non-accredited programs. And also another thing I feel very important to emphasize is different performance is not equals to bias. That's a very important conclusion in this report said, because bias means we are measuring something we shouldn't measure. But a different performance, we just show the differences, people kind of coming with different ability or skill level, but doesn't mean exam may kind of represent that difference, but not cause that difference. So yeah, these are important points to take away from here.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Song. Okay, do we have any others?
We do. I wanted to touch base quickly with our raised hands. So Ann Gimple, I know you've had a couple of questions, but I wanted to check in if you have additional comments. I sent you a request to unmute. Okay, Ann Gimple, I'm gonna skip over you next. Oh, no. Oh, okay. You have no further questions. Thank you. I'll lower your hand for you. And next commenter with a raised hand is David Cushman. David, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And you're unmuted.
Core faculty member for California Institute of Integral Studies, a regionally accredited program. And, there's, I just wanted to say one, our students are great, and I can speak to the quality of the training that regionally accredited students get. And two, just as a reminder that all of our students go to KPIC internship sites, which serve our low-fee community mental health clinics, the vast majority of them. And all of our students have to go to a California site. APA accredited programs send graduates for pre-doctoral internships across the country. But all our and other regionally accredited programs stay in California, and we provide a really important service for California consumers, especially working with folks on the margins who can't afford private practice clinics. So I just want to emphasize the important role that regionally accredited programs play for consumers in the state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. We have any more comment?
We do have. So again, Thomas Wells, I don't see your audio. I realize though, if you are a call-in user and you've used your cell phone for your audio, you may need to press *3 on your phone in order to be recognized verbally. But while you are working on that, we will go to a hand raised from Jesse Jacob. Jesse, I'm going to send you a request to unmute. You're unmuted.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this meeting and the attention to detail as well as the clear presentation. I wanted to ask if there's any data or focus on a cultural element, which is that I have found that students who are attracted to APA schools sometimes may be stronger already in terms of taking the SAT, GRE, and other standardized exams. Is there any knowledge of how much of this result is due to whatever training is provided by the school, or perhaps simply the strength of the student upon entering a particular grad program? That is, that the APA schools are attracting students who are already more skilled at standardized testing. Thank you.
Dr. Calvert, do you have any comment?
I have no data, but I do have a comment.
Okay.
I think we all can reasonably infer that different schools are going to attract different types of students for many reasons. And a study could and should look into that. I would also comment that if you were to transport students from Harvard into another lower performing school, they would likely excel at that school. But if you were to inversely transport students from a low performing school into Harvard, they may run into more difficulty. We don't know that. It's just a thought experiment. We understand that different schools provide different things and are based on different foundations. And I'm not speaking about psychology at all here. I want to be very clear. I'm not talking about this test. I'm just talking about a thought experiment. So if your position is that there's an underlying skill in test taking that would relate to taking a test, I think we could all agree to that. We could also likely agree that it's going to be different across different placements, and those placements or schools are going to admit students of different skill levels. However, that's not part of our analysis here, and there is within the psychometric community a desire to try to minimize what that effect is. It's not going to go away, but we would consider that like a extraneous variable and try to minimize it where possible.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Any, Madam Moderator, any other comments?
Just a few more, yeah. One from Jonalyn Blaha. What is the average number of times a candidate takes the exam, excluding first attempts? Is there a further breakdown in differences between APA and non-APA schools on this?
Dr. Calvert.
We do have the data for that, and that analysis was not run, I'm sorry to say. I could speak in a generality to trends that isn't this test, or I can just tell you that data wasn't run. Does the board have a preference?
I think probably just no, not in generalities. It could end up being confusing, and I think this person is wanting.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
So yes, we have the ability to run that analysis. No, it was not run here.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Next comment or question.
Next was basic thank you from Jacqueline Horn. Thank you, Dr. Calvert, for explaining the purpose of a licensing exam. Let's see, and from Cindy Mannion, it may be very helpful to understand specifically what the major changes, topic, question, subject, etc., were made in 2012 through 15. Was psychopharmacology a bigger part, etc., as an item analysis of those changes?
Yes, well, that's good information. Dr. Song is listening, and I think she can use that as she thinks about the item analysis and her work as the psychometrician at ASPPB. Thank you.
And let me make sure Dr. Song is the ability to unmute again. There we go.
Yeah, I don't think psychopharmacology is the major change across the year. We have a separate psychopharmacology exam for those people get an additional master degree in that area. For those exam changes, you can go to ASPPB website to see recent years blueprint to compare those will give you more reading material about the exam content change and distribution, but psychopharmacology is not a major part of that change.
Thank you, Dr. Song.
Sure.
So helpful that you're on this call.
Thank you.
We did get one more question.
Okay.
From Dr. Barbara Lipinski. Is there any data on the number or percentage of students who abandon the pursuit of passing the EPPP after unsuccessful attempts in the past 20 years? I'm curious, given the comment earlier that most repeat test takers eventually do pass.
Well, Dr. Calvert, didn't your analysis show about 80%, 85% eventually passed?
It depends on how we're cutting the data up.
Okay.
So realize that I stopped my eventually pass analysis at 2020.
Okay.
Well, some of those people could have passed subsequently. As time goes on, you become more and more likely to eventually pass. That's the first one. The second is we don't have complete information because this is only California data. So if a person went to another state and applied through that state, we would not see them. They would be missed in our analysis. However, if we were to look back through time, there is a relatively low proportion of people who don't finish within California. We just can't say that they didn't finish somewhere else. And that has ranged between 5 and 15% through the analysis that was run. And that 15% is recent. And being recent, it means they haven't had the chance to do more attempts to make that higher.
Oh, thank you. That's helpful. Okay.
And it looks like that is the end of the questions.
Okay.
So I close public comment.
Please do. Please do.
Thank you.
Okay. Back to the committee members, Dr. Tate and Ms. Nystrom, any other further thoughts on this presentation or questions? I hear none. So let's see, it's 1:15. We have one more agenda item before we go to the recommendations for future agenda items, which would be then the end of our open session. Committee members, what would you prefer to do? Take a short break or do item number 7?
I would say
I'm
let's
okay
start item
moving.
7.
Dr.
Yeah, I
Tate?
agree.
What was it? I didn't hear.
I said let's do item number 7.
Okay, great. And you
Starting.
agreed. Okay. So item number 7 is barriers to telehealth survey follow-up. The board asked that our committee look at the data from the barriers to telehealth survey that we saw at a previous board meeting and give some ideas on competency requirements in doctoral programs, training settings, and supervised experience. So it's kind of a brainstorming. What are some of the things we want to think about? So I pulled up the survey. I think you probably have that maybe on your computers, the data from the survey that we saw. I think it was at the November board meeting. So we're looking at, there was a survey that consumers responded to and a survey that providers responded to. So I thought, well, let's start with the consumers and look at, we're talking about barriers. So what are the issues that we are seeing in what people are answering? Are there barriers for getting to a provider? Are the barriers where people are living? And what we're trying to look at is competency requirements. What do people need to know?
Dr. Harpsheets, did you have a couple of takeaways?
Yeah, a couple of takeaways. Sure. In the consumer one, okay, there were 220, 230 responses thereabouts. And people said, like 90% of people said that they were comfortable receiving psychological services through telehealth. And they, mainly got them at home, so that didn't seem to be an issue. One was, if they said, were there any issues, it was privacy. And, I certainly have seen that in my practice. An interesting thing is sometimes people were doing it in their car, while they were driving. And so we might want to think about what do we want our licensees to know or to learn about? How do we handle those things when people are in other kinds of settings? Maybe a dorm room where there might be other people coming in and out, and concerns around confidentiality. So those are some of the thoughts that I think come up. And I'm sure for you, Dr. Tate, you've seen the same kind of thing come up in your own practice, right?
Yeah, for me, it's the privacy. So when people are calling and they're in the airport
Right.
or they're trying
Yeah.
to connect with you and they're in a drive-through, or, it feels like the phone is an extension, but maybe not an appropriate one in the setting when you're
Right.
receiving treatment.
So I think, yeah, exactly. And so what do you do when somebody's, because we're asked to find out where they are and to document that. And we make sure that they're in the state. But if they say, yeah, I'm at the airport, but it's okay. Nobody's listening, right? I think it would be important to help in people learn how to handle that, or is it really appropriate, and what is our responsibility in terms of protecting confidentiality for them? And then of course there's and what do you do if the person says, no, I need to talk to you because I really have a serious situation going on? How do you balance that? These kinds of nuances that come up too.
Yeah, it almost makes me think, we as a profession, we've always, we need a private space, a quiet space, a confidential space, and we kind of take it for granted. But I think in our new age, 2024, we might need to go a step further and provide more guidance of, hey, maybe this isn't the best time for you. Is there a better time where you will truly have privacy? And if you are in your car, which for a lot of people, that is the best privacy they have. But is it parked? Are we driving? Are we safety concerns around that? So we may have to just go one step further than we have ever done before, and guidance around that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When they talked about technical barriers, some of them were about the therapist not really understanding the technology and managing that well. But then, are we wanting to include? Do we think it's a good idea that we include that kind of knowledge? Are we going to talk? Do we think people should be taught technology in internships or in graduate programs? Do you know what I mean? Is that maybe? I don't. What do you think?
It definitely has come up for me because I am no tech guru. So that person that needs an extra 10 minutes to get everything set up the right way. That's interesting that you mentioned that as maybe something that you would get in grad school somehow of how to set it up appropriately. And
yeah,
I think that's a little bit difficult too, because that's ever changing. There's, different technological ways to connect all the time. So that might be a piece that's kind of hard.
Yeah, you're right. But then what happens, like, I know that I have run into situations where it starts out fine, and then all of a sudden there's some sound issue, or the person is in an area where the coverage isn't good. And so helping people to understand, what do we do about that? As Dr. Tate disappears off the screen, and I'm wondering if that's a technology issue. But it would be helpful, I think, to give some training or education on how do you handle that with the client? And also that makes me think about if there's an emergency that comes up, the person says something during a session that makes you worried for their safety. I think that's important to help people learn what to do about in those situations.
Dr. Harbsheets, if I might just plug a possible idea for consideration. Since the California Law and Ethics exam, part of the competency requirements is in the area of telehealth. If we shared this survey with our exam experts as they're considering subject area and item writing, because one example that comes up in my mind that was shocking for me was the family that had a group therapy session while going through a drive-through. And obviously that doesn't sound like a good situation.
Yeah.
But I just want to mention that, as well as possibly sharing the survey results with training programs and schools, so that they're aware of the data that we collected. I know what's come up in the past when the board gets into kind of dictating curriculum, that has come up as maybe not supported from some of the schools or people in the industry. So being mindful of that. Those are a couple of options that I wanted to, put out there for the committee to consider.
Yeah, I mean, it makes good sense to share that with the item writing group for the CAPLE, for sure.
If I may interject, I'm sorry, I got word that we lost sound in the El Dorado room.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm going to ask for a pause while we troubleshoot.
Okay.
And thank you, Sarah, for letting us know. Okay, we have someone dialing back in to see if they can get the audio working. It sounds like you've got it. Can I get a thumbs up from whoever's on camera? All right, wonderful. You may resume. Thank you.
Okay. And I hear what you're saying, Ms. Sorick, about how people are perceiving the board specifying educational requirements, if I'm saying that right. And this would be perhaps another one of those kinds of things that we would ask people to take a course on, or to have shown that they had some kind of a course. Is that what you're saying, though?
Yes.
That's a concern. Yeah. So it's definitely something for us to think about and talk about. Dr. Tate, Ms. Nystrom, what are your thoughts about that?
Ms. Sorick, her comments are well heated. She's correct. We probably shouldn't be putting our hand into curriculum. I was just trying to think out loud about how to convey the changing times and what's appropriate or not appropriate. And also, Ms. Nystrom makes a good point. Technology is always changing, and that's my issue, right? I figure out a platform and then it switches. So
yeah. In some ways, it would be important for the ethics classes that people take, the ethics courses that we ask them to take with license renewal, to have a component on telehealth, providing telehealth ethically. Because these are the kinds of things I was talking about before, like if an emergency situation comes up, or where the people are at in confidentiality, that would all fit within providing these services in an ethical manner. right?
Well, it's basically telehealth best practices, right?
Right. Exactly.
Some
Exactly.
kind of,
Yeah. Yeah. So on one hand, it asking us to talk about what should be in competency requirements, it actually might be going as being a step ahead, and maybe we need to first look back and say, okay, but should we really be talking about what we think should be in competency requirements? Like, are we putting the cart before the horse?
Hi, this is Miss Nystrom. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I like the idea of the telehealth, like best practices guidelines as well. I'm not sure if that's something that we can work on for practitioners to have a level of expectation of, you know, kind of what the patient can hear or, you know, expect from their practitioner, and, you know, the same from the client with their psychologist as to what their expectation is as well.
Yeah. So it kind of brings us back to, is this really something that we should be, first, maybe that the first question is, maybe, should we be doing this? Should we have information, we see what people are saying, and that's important, but what's the best way for us to use that? Is it to maybe even just write an article or encourage ethics courses to include this kind of information, or encourage our licensees to take programs in their continuing professional development, part of maybe their sponsored CE, versus trying to say, okay, you know, every time you renew your license, or at least once, you have to have taken a course on this. You know, some people, I mean, don't do telehealth services at all, but many of them do, 100% even. So I feel like we kind of have to ask that question. Ms. Sorik's comments really makes me stop and think about that.
Yeah, I mean, her comments, I understand where she's coming from. So I don't think we can dictate colleges and university curriculum at that level. But maybe a one pager on telehealth best practices. It's on our website. We put it in the newsletter initially. Doesn't feel intrusive or taking a commanding stance. But this is, you know, I would love to do something with this information, and that seems to be a logical step.
Yeah. Well, you know,
I think it's a good place to start. I think it's a good place to start.
Yeah. So maybe what we can do, because I think we have this option, is to revisit this at our July meeting, and we'll give it some thought in the meantime about, you know, what are some of the ideas that we can communicate using this information, and what's the best way to do that, short of getting involved in the educational system? Or do we feel strongly that maybe we should get involved in it? But I think having a more extended discussion at our July meeting might be a way to approach it more effectively. What do you guys think?
Maybe if we could
sounds
come
good
to
to
the
me.
July. Oh, sorry, Ms. Nystrom.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dr. Tate.
Oh, I was going to say maybe coming to that meeting in July with some of our ideas around telehealth best practices, so we're not, you know, wasting time. You know, I hate putting things off if we're not going to be fruitful with it. So it would be the three of us coming to that meeting with some ideas about what to put on paper, and then using public comment support also.
I think so too. I think that would be really helpful, and because it feels a little, I mean, we've got this information from the November board meeting, and there's, you know, some obvious things that we've talked about that stand out, but how do we do, or what, what's the best way that we can feel our licensees have that level of competence? What's the best format to give that? Is it coursework that we ask for coursework, or there's so much involved in that yeah, I agree. If we could use that time between now and that July meeting to come up with some very specific ideas and thoughts, it wouldn't be a matter of just sort of putting off till tomorrow without making it productive. And Ms. Sorik, from what you remember of the discussion at the board meeting, does that feel acceptable?
I think that's a great plan forward. And I like Dr. Tate's idea of kind of coming prepared with some thoughts on what some best practices would look like. And then we can have Mr. Payne help us navigate having an informational document, that is helpful and provides practical information, without looking like an underground regulation by giving guidance that may look like a legal document. So we can talk about how that looks and provide some useful information, because I agree that what we see from the study or from the survey was a lot of gaps in education or guidance on how to provide telehealth in a way that is following the law and is safe for our consumers.
Yeah, okay. Let's open it for public comment now, and let's hear what other thoughts people have.
And this is the moderator, and we are opening up both the WebEx Q&A and hand raise feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment, you can look for the hand icon in the bottom row of your computer screen or behind the 3-dot other options if you're on a mobile device to raise your hand. If you are a call-in user, you can press *3 to raise your hand. And if you'd like, you can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Let's see. So Sheila Clark has posted a PDF, it looks like from the Board of Behavioral Science, that may be of use. And then we've got requests. Again, Thomas Wells, we have no way of unmuting you, so you'll have to use the Q&A. Dr. Elizabeth Winkleman, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. And Dr. Winkleman, did you see a pop-up on your computer screen? Oh, there you go. You're unmuted.
Wanted to thank the board members and staff for all the discussion and questions and thorough discussion of these issues that have come up today. I wanted to mention about the telehealth that the results of the survey are really consistent and relevant to everything, that's happening nationwide in telehealth, so that there really are a lot of national resources about this to keep it in mind. I agree with Ms. Sorik's concerns about not making additional formal requirements for our members, because we are already required to be competent in whatever type of service we're providing. And I also wanted to mention that the telehealth regulations that the board adopted in CCR 1396.8 does talk already somewhat about competence and competence, including the use of the technology and so forth. So I think there may be a lot of information there already existing that can be highlighted. So, so I appreciate the direction you're taking with that, and just wanted to suggest that you also make sure to look at, national level information and guidance that I think would be helpful, and then maybe highlight the previous regulations. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Winkleman. Okay. I see we have some other comments.
We do.
Yeah.
Let's see. I have a raised hand from Joseph Sims. Joseph, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted. But we're not hearing your voice.
Telehealth in
Oh,
the
there you are.
prisons. Can you hear?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. I participated as a prison psychologist in the first rollout of telehealth in the prisons, where at the outlying prisons, you can't get psychiatrists to drive out there, say to where I worked in Tehachapi. And so it was helpful to review meds. Also, I provided the test examination consulting wing that helps write the licensing exam with about a 60-page book from the APA on telehealth that they might take that into consideration in future exam item writing. And then finally, I am probably more conservative than anything I've heard just now. I think anybody, before they undertake telehealth, really probably ought to be required to take a 6-hour course on concerns such as doing family therapy in the drive-through at McDonald's. That to me is really appalling, and I think it ought to be regulated, and I believe in telehealth. The people that come to the board to help write exam questions say it works, it's as effective as one-on-one therapy. I'm all for any technology that helps us reach people in rural communities and underserved areas. I'm all for it. But I think this issue to me is as important as child abuse or elder abuse or the other things that we require one class, one time for. And I cannot see the reluctance to require it as a benefit to the consumer. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, our next comment is from Colin user 6, and I will go ahead and add or let you know that you can press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hey there, my name is Christo Franklin. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Oh, good. Hey, so I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm calling in to suggest that y'all not start down the slippery slope of determining about competence use technology. Today, you're thinking about telehealth, but will you then start giving educational guidelines for AI, virtual reality, and then it goes from there.
I think that's an excellent point, and thank you for bringing that up, because you're right. It could expand, right?
Yeah. By what rationale will you delimit which technologies? I think the other way of looking at it is, what is the responsibility of the Board of Psychology as a part of the Division of Consumer Advocacy? I think thinking not about what training is required, but what are consumers entitled to assume about the protection they're receiving when somebody is licensed?
Right. Well, and that's sort of the basis of this question, is to make sure that our licensees have that competency. And how do we do that? Do we do that? I mean, we want to make sure that they are competent to practice, and part of that is through licensing exams. But then you can see, as we have ethics courses for when people renew their license, or cultural diversity, is this another aspect to look at, because it's providing safe and effective treatment. But thank you for that, because I think that's really important for us to think about, as I think you probably heard us in this discussion. have that
Two final brief thoughts.
Sure.
One is the idea that the brief of the Board of Psychology derives from consumer protection also bears to the question of, should the California Board of Psychology be involved in SIPAC? How does that protect California consumers? And if it doesn't, then that is why the Board of Psychology has nothing to say about whether California should be part of SIPAC. Final thought, and this is just the intrusion of, are we kidding ourselves about the situation in the United States? When we talk about, presumably we're talking about the importance of telehealth with an eye to privacy and security. It seems to me we're kidding ourselves. There is no online privacy or security, because both our own government and goodness knows what other government-sponsored enterprises are recording and monitoring our use of the internet. And this doesn't seem to be widely acknowledged, that somehow the practitioner is liable for protecting the consumer in this way, when even the US government doesn't protect the consumer in this way. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Those are all really important points and things to think about. And what you said about SIPAC, if you have heard any of the board discussions, they do center around consumer protection in California. So you made important points. Okay, what's next?
All right, let's go ahead and hit some of the Q&A materials or questions, comments. Cindy Mannion also mentioned, please take a look at the BBS, or Board of Behavioral Sciences. They have dealt with this issue and modified the CE requirements. Telehealth 3 hours. Note, can be any age and must include legal and ethical issues related to telehealth. And there are a number of BPC sections mentioned, required for all licensees renewing after July 1st, 2023. And I'm sure that if you don't have access to that information, Executive Officer Sorek will get it to you. And again, Sheila Clark mentions AB 1759 requires 3 hours for the MFT license. James Henry Willis mentioned, I would like to read the surveys. Can you make them available? I suspect many of us could offer suggestions. And in an attempt to direct people, I did add the location for how to find the meeting materials that have been discussed.
Oh, thank you for doing that. Great.
You're welcome. And we're working on another slide as well. Let's see. Guillermo Herrera says, maybe you can email us a questionnaire or survey regarding our telehealth practices we currently encounter in order to prepare our data for the July meeting. Purna Data says, Trust Liability Inc. provides training in telehealth and also offers certification in telehealth for attending required webinars. Yelena Blank says, this is a comment to follow up on another attendee comment. California consumers are in fact impacted by our decisions about SIPAC if when they travel to other states, but are still California residents.
Great.
And then we have a few raised hands. Let's see, Dr. Kylene Kelly, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. It may be a pop-up or it may appear on the 3-dot other options in your cell phone. And Dr. Kylene Kelly, have you been able to find the unmute pop-up? All right, it appears not. Dr. Kelly, you may be able to go into the three-dot other options on your mobile device, click on the question mark icon and type your comment in, and then click send. We have a raised hand from Lanique. I'm going to send you a request to unmute.
Hi, everyone. Again, I am a clinical psychologist as well, and I do want to say that I support the last comment discussing the concerns here about telehealth. If I can just state a couple of points here, I think number one, telehealth, even though it is not new in nature, I do think that due to COVID and the pandemic, access and awareness of telehealth has definitely increased, right, since prior years. But I do think that since it has, we're only in 2024, right? So we're still dealing with COVID now, right? COVID was 2020, 21. So it's still relatively recent. I think that telehealth and the access and everything that goes along with telehealth is still relatively new. So what I will say is that, in the same way that I think, we are looking at the new continuing education credits, right, and looking at how this particular new information is something that everyone is going to have to kind of get used to and figure out on their own. I think it's very similar here. I think telehealth is a very similar process. I think we have already kind of discussed the numerous resources out there for telehealth education. I mean, I can just go through, I just do a basic Google search, and there's so many different resources that are available. APA is available, telehealth, California Telehealth Resource Center is available. CCE Global is available. I mean, there's so many, BBH, there's so many different resources that are available that either have trainings and significant trainings. Some are 6 and 10-hour trainings available that go through everything like technology and setup and what to expect and things of this nature. So the resources are available, and I do think that it is our responsibility as a licensed clinician to access those materials and to know what we're getting into before we engage in any kind of services for the consumer. I think that that's also part of our laws and ethics. So if we are going to be competent and continue to be a licensed clinician, then I think that this is a part of that process. I don't think that we need to have any additional legislature. I think that actually undermines our efforts, right, to continue to be licensed and stay abreast of all of the new information that we need to know, year to year. I do think that technology is rapidly changing as well. I definitely agree with a significant increase in our unfortunate lack of privacy, especially online, but also it's becoming more invasive in other places as well. So I think at this point, it behooves the clinician to assess what is reasonable. What is reasonable for our client? What is reasonable for the consumer? How can we reasonably address confidentiality and privacy, taking into consideration things like culture and socioeconomic status, right? So consumers right now, our American public, are going through so much. Economically, we're going through so much. So people right now they may not find times to be able to have an hour, 45 minutes to themselves. They may not have access to that in certain areas, the United States or even in California. These are things that we have to take into consideration as clinicians. What is most important, that we treat or that we find a place where they can be quiet? And these are very real decisions that we're having to make. Again, I think if you're licensed, and again, if you've gone through this process, you should be able to handle those questions and those issues professionally. I think if you're not, then that would give obvious cause for pause.
Thank you very much. And I think what you're referring to is what Dr. Winkleman was reminding us of, is that our licensees are required to be competent. And if we practice in a way that we don't have the competence that we need, then we need to not be doing that. And we are responsible for that. So thank you very much. Okay. Do we have any further comments?
I did want to verify that the material is on the screen with the link or the information about the telehealth survey, regulations, and FAQs. Is that showing?
It is, and that's really helpful.
Perfect.
So people can maybe take a picture of it since it won't be a hyperlink. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Executive Officer Sorek for that. We have a comment from Sheila Clark that mentions that telehealth requires HIPAA compliant platforms. So that's a consideration. And then she also gave a link that Executive Officer Sorek will have access to.
Great.
And then as far as raised hands, I can try to circle back with Dr. Kylene Kelly. I'm sending you another request to unmute in case that gets through. There you go. You're unmuted.
Thank you all so much. Similar to one of the most recent people who was speaking, you have to do an informed consent for telehealth whenever you're beginning a telehealth commitment with a client. And I believe that it's just part of our standard of maintaining our law and ethics and knowledge and understanding to maintain our license. It doesn't seem like it needs to be an additional thing. Things should be offered so that we can expand our understanding so that we can be the best providers possible. But it seems like that just falls under being an ethical, law-abiding support to your clients and maintaining that.
Thank you very much. So true. Okay. Do we have any others, or are we through?
We do appear to be through all the comments.
Okay.
Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay. Just back to the committee members for a moment to see if you would like to add anything else, Dr. Tate or Ms. Nystrom. No, I hear nothing. Okay. You know, I feel badly that Dr. Calvert has left and I didn't thank him appropriately for the work. So, Ms. Sorek, would you maybe send me his email that I could do that at least through an email?
Will do.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to item number 8, which is recommendations for agenda items for future licensure committee meetings. Committee members, do you have any agenda items that you would like to recommend? Okay.
None here.
None there. And Dr. Tate?
Not for me.
Okay, we know that we're going to talk again about this, these barriers, and come with information that, and so we have that. We already know that. But okay, let us open to public comment. If any of our public members would like to share with us some ideas for future meetings.
Certainly, we've opened up both the hand raise feature and the Q&A feature of WebEx to facilitate public comment. Just as a point of clarification, is it true that none of our physical locations have any in-person attendees? Is that correct?
None in San Diego.
None in Reading.
Great, thank you.
None in Sacramento.
Perfect, just making sure. All right, so if anyone connected through WebEx would like, you can either click on the question mark icon and then in the text box type the word comment and click send, or you can raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, which is at the bottom of your WebEx screen or behind the 3-dot other options if you're on a mobile device. And if you are a call-in user, you can press *3 to raise your hand. We do have some hand raises. Let's go ahead and work through. Renee Dumetz, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted. You can go ahead.
Yes, I'm speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Are we going to discuss, is the board going to discuss part of the, I see here in the materials that there is a discussion about limiting SIPACT to APA approved schools. And I'm curious to know if that's part of the discussion today.
No, that's not part of today's discussion, and that would be an issue that the overall board would be taking up. And Mr. Burke mentioned, I think earlier, that if you watch for future board meetings, I think he said at the August board meeting, some of that will come up.
And is it open to, do we have the ability to sending our opinions and considerations around this before that meeting?
I don't know if there's at this point a public comment. Ms. Sorick, is there, or would we just encourage people to come at the board meeting and make comments, because it will be a discussion that we'll be having?
Yes, it will be a discussion, and if anyone wanted to provide a written comment to the board, they would just, it would be helpful to have that as far in advance of the meeting, so we could include it in the meeting materials for the board members to review.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, next one.
Let's see, next raised hand is Trisha Wallace. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted.
I appreciate the opportunity to make a comment. I am both duly licensed as a clinical psychologist and a licensed clinical social worker. And as one of the commenters mentioned, a telehealth, with a one-time requirement to have a telehealth continuing education to be able to renew a license with my LCSW. And it wasn't the requirement itself that made me a better telehealth provider. It was me practicing within the scope and ethics of my my professions to be able to be a good telehealth provider. So I just want to echo that and have a personal experience that it's not the requirement that makes me more competent. I also just want to say that if there's some way to consider that the board use those survey materials just for wider use in publishing. So I appreciate the information being talked about having as part of a newsletter or publishing maybe some social media if the board has, you know, to click on the survey results, to read them, to digest them, maybe a future discussion about that rather than going down the road of any legislation. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And so remember, we are just talking about items, recommendations for future agenda items for our next meeting in July. So I want to limit this part of the meeting to that, and just let you know, in case you're wondering, that Ms. McCochran will come on in just a moment as soon as we finish this agenda item, and let us know how many hours that we can use for CPD for participation in today's meeting. Okay.
Correct. We do have a suggestion for a topic from Ann Gimple. She writes, it may not be possible, but I'd like to do a deeper dive into why older people are doing so poorly with the new version of the EPPP.
Okay, great. I write that down too. Okay. Got it.
And then this is not a future agenda item, but in full transparency, I'll read it. Jason Mitowski, I am just joining the meeting, but has there been a SIPACT update?
Okay, and the answer is no. Okay.
And Jesse Jacob, I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hi, thank you. Briefly, I appreciate the response before about the possibility for professionals to list a PO box to protect their location on Breeze. I noticed that most people don't do that, and I would like it to be brought up at the next meeting. The rationale behind listing what is usually the personal address of all professionals on Breeze, which I strongly feel creates a significant safety risk. For example, if a client is upset with their therapist, they would know where to find them. I understand that we can have a PO box, but most people don't opt to do that. So I don't fully understand why all these addresses are offered online, whether a PO box or not. And I'd like that to be addressed at the next meeting if possible, with the consideration of not offering this address to the public.
Okay.
Thank you.
I wrote that down. Thank you. Great. Okay.
And I do not see any further. Let me check one more time. Oh, Nicole Thompson, I'm sending you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted.
Populations that are underserved. I was just wondering, do we have any research about, I don't know, different programs provided or anything that would help clinicians better serve Californians in general? I don't know if that's a super clear question. I know like there's definitely options to do like volunteer work, or I was just wondering if that would be something that could be discussed of like other ways to help underserved communities.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Let's see, Amanda Kim, I am going to send you a request to unmute. You're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I was the one that wrote earlier that I took the EPPP 7 times. Woot woot, go me. And so I was wondering if an agenda item for next meeting could be something around, like, I wonder if there's like support groups or, because I know there's like educational packets out there, but one of the biggest like things for me that helped me move through that 4-year process was learning how to effectively kind of self-soothe and take care of myself through holistic health means. And now I actually use that in my practice and teach my clients how to navigate through anxiety in more effective ways. And so I just wonder if there's any sort of effort towards some sort of support group or yeah, just helping students through that process.
Okay, thank you very much. Got it.
And the one other comment from Jason Mitowski is asking to have a SIPACT update added to the agenda for the next meeting.
SIPAC would really be a board discussion, and that is in the queue to be in one of the upcoming board meetings. I can't say specifically which one, but it's beyond the licensure committee at this point.
Thank you. And I do, if it's an appropriate time, I do have a slide to share with the information about the professional development hours and the process to claim those.
Great, thank you very much.
Shall I do that now or later?
No, now would be just right.
Perfect, thank you. Let's see.
Question. Hi, this is Lizelle. So for those who attended the full licensure committee meeting today, you will receive 6 CPD hours for your participation under CPD category number 1, attendance at a Board of Psychology meeting. For your records, please note today's date as February 2nd, 2024, the name of today's meeting, which is licensure committee meeting, and 6 CPD hours. If you called in, please email bopce@dca.ca.gov with your license number, your name, and the phone number used. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCochran. Okay. At this point, we will close the open session portion of our meeting and move into closed session to discuss and consider qualifications for licensure. We will not be discussing any items in open session after the closed session of business concludes, except to adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for coming and participating so actively. I hope you found it useful, and I really appreciate hearing from so many of you. I think this is one of the benefits of CPD, and I hope you feel that way also. So please, moderator, could you please close the open session portion of the meeting?
Certainly, and we ask your patience as we do this transition. One moment, please.